The day begins with a declaration of hunger. But for the young gatekeeper, it's another day of duty. He watches the display, his own stomach empty. Suddenly, a voice of authority calls him out. A knight of the prestigious Blelic family is not pleased. She is Raphael, and she pays him with utter disdain. In her mind, he is nothing but worthless scum. His salary is thrown at his feet like trash. She tells him to be grateful for his floor-based salary. He's just a placeholder, she sneers, not a real knight. She reminds him that his mistakes reflect on them. His hand clenches, a silent show of defiance on the cold stone. He can only stare up at the three figures looming over him. Suddenly, his stomach lets out an embarrassingly loud growl. The knights are appalled, acting as if his hunger is an insult. Raphael sees it as an accusation, and her rage finally snaps. Her companions sneer, while she frets about her reputation. Her armored boot slams down, pinning his face to the ground. But a new voice rings out, warning her that she's going too far. Raphael recognizes the knight, Roxy Hart, who is on today's shift. Raphael's companions grumble, annoyed by the interruption. Her green-haired lackey flashes a particularly nasty smile. Our boy is left on the cold stone, utterly stunned. But Roxy rushes to his side, calling him by name, Fate. He looks up, his eyes wide with disbelief. He can't believe she actually remembered his name. She helps him up, reminding him they're comrades in arms. She vows that if they ever touch him again, she'll intervene. Flustered, Fate insists he's okay, waving her concern away. He then bolts for his post, leaving Roxy slightly bewildered. As he runs, his thoughts are only of Roxy's safety. He believes she has a greater path to walk, unburdened by him. But his own problems resurface with a familiar gnawing ache. His gaze hardens as he reflects on his curse. In this world, everyone is born with a divine skill. But Fate's skill is a cruel joke called Gluttony. It's a power that makes him feel like an outcast. He remembers the untouchable power of the Holy Knights. But then, a sudden thought stops him in his tracks. He recalls the sneering face of Raphael's green-haired lackey. He worries Raphael's crew will now target Roxy for her kindness. Lost in thought, he wanders the darkening city streets. He spots Roxy, a lone figure of duty against the twilight. A brief moment of peace is shattered by a sudden sight. His eyes widen as he spots intruders scaling the city wall. He realizes they're in her blind spot and sprints to warn her. He calls out her name, catching her completely by surprise. He breathlessly reports the wall-climbing bandits. So much for a quiet shift. She needs to be sure, and he confirms it without hesitation. Her expression hardens as she processes the grave news. Roxy's smile is bright and unwavering. She's got this. She asks him to cover her post, and Fate agrees in a heartbeat. He calls out to her, a hint of worry in his voice. Now armed with her spear, he wishes her the best of luck. She gives him one last look of pure, unshakable confidence. With a flash of steel, she sprints towards the danger. Fate can only watch her go, his heart heavy with concern. The sounds of battle echo briefly, then an eerie quiet descends. He's amazed by her power, assuming the fight is already won. But a single drop of blood tells a very different, darker story. Heavy footsteps echo from the darkened alley. Fate looks up in horror, calling out for Roxy. But it's not her. It's a wounded bandit, one arm gone. The intruder glares, dismissing Fate as a mere obstacle. The terrible realization dawns on him. Someone got past Roxy. He knows if this man escapes, the blame will fall on her. His grip tightens on the spear she entrusted to him. And with a defiant roar, he decides today is not his day to be a placeholder. He lunges forward, driving the spear deep into the bandit's chest. The bandit can only gasp, his life fading in an instant. The bandit falls, and Fate can only stare in disbelief. The world dissolves into a crimson haze around him. And then, his cursed skill, Gluttony, awakens with a vengeance. It devours the bandit's soul, granting him terrifying new powers. But a voice suddenly cuts through the dark trance. Roxy rushes back, her face a mask of pure concern. She reaches out, desperate to know if he's been harmed. Her thoughts race with guilt, worried she let him get hurt. Guess the dead guy on the floor is a secondary concern, but Fate hears her thoughts clear as a bell. He flinches away, trying to hide his impossible new secret. He forces a smile, insisting that he's completely unharmed. Roxy looks down at him, her expression softening with relief. She's just thankful that he managed to stay safe. But Fate is still reeling, wondering what that strange voice was. He asked her to take all the credit for defeating the bandits. Roxy refuses, reminding him that he fought one of them too. He explains it's to avoid trouble with Raphael's prestigious family. She closes her eyes, understanding the political mess it would create. With a nod, she agrees to his version of the story, but she tells him that she's the one who is truly grateful. She insists he saved her family's honor and must be thanked. Fate panics, saying a holy knight owes him nothing. His refusal earns him a surprisingly pouty look from Roxy. He's taken aback, seeing a more human side to the perfect knight. She pauses for a moment, searching for the right idea, and then a brilliant solution comes to her mind. She offers him a position working for the Hart family. The offer leaves Fate completely speechless and stunned, but his mind races with reasons to refuse this incredible chance. Roxy cuts through his doubts, telling him the Bleliks are no concern. She asks if he's content to serve the Bleliks his entire life. He finally relents, bowing deeply and accepting the position. With the deal sealed, she dismisses him for the night. She gives him a time and place, promising she'll be waiting. Her kindness is almost too much for him to comprehend. Overwhelmed, he can only offer his deepest thanks. For the first time in ages, he feels an overwhelming happiness. Of course, happiness can't last for more than 5 seconds. He's back in reality, lying on a simple straw bed, and a sudden realization fills him with absolute dread. He wakes in his humble room, feeling like it was all a strange dream. But the memories flash back, confirming the brutal, unbelievable truth. He recalls the mysterious voice that spoke to him in the darkness. It mentioned new skills, appraisal, and mind reading. He focuses his thoughts, and a new power answers his call. A status window appears displaying his name and stats. His eyes widen in absolute shock at the numbers. His stats, once pathetic, have all jumped into the hundreds. Well, that's one way to get a glow-up. And just as the voice said, 2 new skills are listed. He finally understands how he heard Roxy's thoughts so clearly. He finally connects the dots. This is the effect of Gluttony. It's a power that steals the lives of those he defeats, and converts their strength directly into his own. For the first time, the gnawing hunger is replaced by fulfillment. A dangerous smile spreads across his face as it all clicks into place. With this newfound knowledge, he knows exactly what he must do. The next morning, he sets out with a clear purpose. He navigates the streets looking for his next victim. Opportunity. His destination is the Safe Art Business District. But a sudden sight makes him stop dead in his tracks. He checks his funds, finding only 2 silver coins. He needs a weapon and knows he can't afford the fancy shops. A friendly voice calls out from a nearby stall. The shopkeeper saw right through him, a classic sales tactic. He invites Fate to take a closer look at his collection. A spark of hope ignites. This might be his chance. But then comes the dreaded question, what's his budget? He presents his entire fortune, 2 meager silver coins. High roller, this one. The shopkeeper's friendly demeanor instantly vanishes. He scoffs, regretting ever being kind to someone so poor. He points Fate towards a pot of rusted, forgotten blades. The man sneers that such trash is a perfect match for him. Fate can only lower his head, swallowing the bitter insult. He figures he won't find better for his price anywhere else. Resigned, he reaches for the pile to make his choice. But first, he decides to test out his new appraisal skill. The stats confirm his fears. The weapons are practically useless. He sighs, realizing the shopkeeper wasn't exaggerating. Well, at least he was an honest jerk. Still, he digs through the pile, hoping for a hidden gem. But as his hand closes on a black hilt, a voice echoes in his mind. He recoils in shock, the voice echoing in his head. He can't believe it. The black sword just spoke to him. His mind races, trying to make sense of the impossible. But the shopkeeper's patience has officially run out. The man's gruff voice snaps him back to the present. He looks around, realizing he was the only one who heard it. His hand hovers over the hilt, a new possibility dawning. The voice speaks again, confirming it's communicating through his new skill. He picks it up, wondering if this blade is cursed. You know, as one does with talking junk swords, there's only one way to find out. He activates his appraisal skill. The appraisal reveals the sword's name, Greed, but his skill can't see anything beyond its name and type. He glances back at the pot of forgotten, rusted metal. A sudden, profound understanding dawns on him. He realizes this sword is treated just like he is, as trash. The voice returns, asking if he will be its new master. He decides it's the only one that seems even remotely usable, and with quiet resolve, he makes his choice. He feels a strange kinship with the discarded blade, a match made in the bargain bin. The sword declares it a fated meeting, vowing to serve him forever. The sword asks for his name, a formal introduction. He introduces himself, Fate Graphite. The blade introduces itself as Greed with a healthy dose of ego, but the shopkeeper's yelling snaps him back to reality. He tosses the 2 silver coins without a second glance. The payment is made and the deal is done. He vows never to return, leaving the man sputtering in his wake. With his new partner in hand, he heads back into the city. He decides to test his new power on some nearby goblins. Greed agrees, but warns him not to get overconfident. As he walks, Fate recalls some advice about goblins. He remembers the words of an old man from a tavern. His journey takes him to the capital's bustling south gate. The area is teeming with warriors preparing for their hunts. He realizes this is where adventurers form their parties. Greed reminds him that he's not entirely alone anymore, but his silent conversation is interrupted by a friendly voice. A blonde-haired warrior approaches, asking if he's here to hunt. He offers Fate a spot in his party for the day. Well, that's a new experience. Fate can hardly believe his luck, eagerly accepting the offer. The blonde warrior gets straight to business, asking for his level. Fate proudly announces that he's a mighty level 1. The warrior's friendly demeanor evaporates in an instant. He coldly tells Fate to give up. No one wants a level 1 liability. The rejection hits hard, a familiar sting of disappointment. His brief hope shatters against the harsh reality of his status. But Greed's voice echoes in his mind with a grave warning. The sword cryptically explains that they are one and the same. You know, just normal talking sword stuff. Fate realizes the sword is right. His skill is too dangerous to reveal. He imagines the bloody consequence of his secret being exposed. He closes his eyes, a quiet smile spreading across his face. With this power, he can finally become untouchable. His eyes snap open, filled with a new determination. His first target is set. It's time to hunt some goblins. He arrives at the goblin field south of the capital. He quickly spots his first victim, a lone goblin sleeping on the job. The coast is clear and his prey is an easy mark. Talk about a perfect first hunt. But first, he decides to test out his new appraisal skill. The skill reveals its stats. A level 3 goblin fighter. He realizes its stats are laughably low compared to his own. He focuses on its skill, a minor strength enhancement. He wonders about the limits of this power, seeing his target is wide open. A confident, almost predatory smile crosses his face. With a determined cry, he lunges forward to strike. The goblin wakes up just in time to regret its nap. And just like before, his gluttony skill roars to life. He stands over the fallen creature, the deed done in an instant. A notification confirms it. He's stolen the goblin's skill. Identity theft is a serious crime, you know. He immediately pulls up his own status to see the results. The numbers have climbed again, and a new skill is added to his arsenal. A smile spreads across his face. He's finally getting stronger. But Greed's voice cuts in, warning him not to get overexcited. Fate explains that until now, his only move was to run away. He stands over his defeated foe, ready to claim his prize. He takes the ear as proof of his kill, a bounty to be claimed. The pay is low, but it's a start to earning his own way. With renewed determination, he's ready for another round. First kill, and he's already a pro. He ventures deeper into the goblin-infested fields. He spots another pair, but this time one is carrying a shield. His eye glows as he activates his appraisal skill once more. The appraisal reveals a level 3 goblin guard, built for defense. Fate quickly deduces their strategy. One for offense, one for defense. He weighs his options, knowing the shield could ruin his attack. With little combat experience, he decides he needs a guaranteed kill. The goblins chatter away, completely unaware they're about to be a stat boost. From above, the two targets are perfectly aligned in the open field. His eyes narrow, a purple glint signaling the moment has come. With a silent cry, he bursts from the tall grass to strike. His foot plants firmly, launching him forward with newfound speed. He raises Greed high, ready to bring it down on his unsuspecting foes. The goblin guard snaps to attention, raising its shield just in time. Fate's eyes widen in panic. His attack is about to be deflected. But Greed slices through the shield like it's made of paper, and once again, his cursed skill awakens to feast on the fallen. He's stunned by the sword's power, earning a new stamina skill. But there's no time to celebrate. Its companion lunges to attack. Fate pivots, cutting down the second goblin without a moment's hesitation. He's getting the hang of this whole overpowered thing. But this time, he notices something is different. He didn't get a new skill. A quick status check reveals the truth. He can't stack the same skill twice. He realizes if he wants new powers, he'll need to hunt more diverse prey. He asks Greed why such an amazing sword was treated like trash. Fate gets a little cocky, but the sword quickly tells him to shut his trap. Still, he can't help but smile, determined to live up to the blade's expectations. He surveys his haul for the day, a massive sack of goblin ears. Curious about his progress, he decides to check his status again. The numbers are unbelievable. His stats have all broken the 1,000 mark. He can't help but laugh, wondering if this power is even real. But one detail bothers him. He's still stuck at level 1. So much for grinding EXP. Greed's voice explains that it's because he possesses a sacrilegious skill. This power prevents him from receiving the world's blessing, leaving Fate utterly confused. Greed explains that Gluttony rejects the divine system of levels. His rock-bottom starting stats were proof he was never blessed. The sword seems to have another secret to share, but it quickly dismisses the thought, leaving Fate curious. Fate decides it's time to head back to the capital. Besides, his stomach is rumbling, and he's earned a break. Already, he's planning his next hunt for a stronger foe. Ambition is a powerful motivator, especially when you can eat it. He makes his way through the city to claim his reward. With his proof of kill, he heads for the collection point. He enters to find two adventurers locked in a heated argument. He notes that the rumors about the guild's rowdiness were true. Before he can even get his bearings, he's shoved aside by a brawler. He's dismissed as a small fry as the receptionist calls for the next person. Fate breathes a sigh of relief, his turn finally arriving. He steps up to the counter and presents his day's work. The receptionist is stunned by the massive haul of goblin ears. She asks about the aggro he must have drawn, a term Fate doesn't recognize. She explains that mass killing one species makes them hunt you down, a valuable lesson for our newbie hunter. It all clicks for Fate. That's why the goblins kept swarming him. The receptionist just smiles, praising his hard work and impressive results. Fate snaps, flustered by her comment on his tattered clothes. He quickly backpedals, blaming the rowdy adventurers from earlier. She just smiles, telling him to wait while she prepares his payment. His thoughts immediately turn to food, a well-earned, filling meal. But Greed's voice cuts in, demanding a proper cleaning before any meal. The sword insists that maintenance is just as important as his hunger. Fate relents, agreeing to find a blacksmith to care for his new partner. After a quick stop, he leaves the blacksmith with a grateful farewell. He clutches his reward, a heavy pouch of coins in his hand. The realization hits him. He's earned more in one day than in the last 5 years. Talk about a career change. He reflects on the 5 years he wasted serving the Bleliks, but he pushes those memories aside, vowing to leave that life behind. With renewed resolve, he declares it's time to look forward. But Greed reminds him that he'll need to learn self-maintenance. Fate realizes paying for repairs would be a constant drain on his funds. He considers the future, knowing he can't always rely on a blacksmith. He finally agrees, promising to buy the necessary tools after he eats. The sword demands to be treated with the utmost care like a precious gem, a bit of an ego on this one. With his promise made, he enters a tavern for a well-deserved feast. And after a day of fighting, only one thing is on his mind: meat. The smell of grilled meat draws him to a nearby tavern. He decides this is the perfect spot for his victory meal, but he's suddenly knocked aside by a man storming out. He and a young girl are sent sprawling to the ground. The man glares down, blaming Fate for being in his way. But Fate isn't the type to take insults lying down anymore. The brute ignores him, roughly yanking the girl to her feet. Fate tries to intervene, but some people just love drama. His eyes lock onto the man's cruel grip on her arm, and then a desperate plea echoes directly in his mind. Fate is completely stunned, realizing he just heard her thoughts. He watches as the brute drags the terrified child away. He struggles to understand what just happened, his mind reeling. The truth dawns on him. It was a plea for help, a kidnapping in plain sight. With grim determination, he activates his appraisal skill on the man. The results are daunting. A level 15 warrior named Kasim Black. But something is off. The man has no skills listed whatsoever. Fate knows this is impossible, deducing it must be a hiding skill. Seems like a useful party trick. Greed's voice confirms his theory, explaining how the power works. The sword then asks the million-dollar question: what is he going to do? Greed confirms that on paper, Fate is the stronger of the two. But the sword warns him that stats aren't everything. He's seen the look in the man's eyes. This is a killer. With his meal forgotten, Fate decides he has to give chase. He can't just stand by and let this happen. As he sprints through the streets, Greed's voice echoes in his mind. The sword offers a grim piece of advice: show no mercy, but Fate struggles with the thought of taking another human life. Guess bandits and goblins don't make the cut. He's no hero, but he can't ignore someone suffering right before him. And with a newfound resolve, he decides he has to help. He follows from the shadows, keeping his target in sight. The kidnapper leads her into a secluded warehouse. He wonders what kind of business goes on in a place like this. Greed speculates that the man plans to sell the child. Fate clenches his jaw. Neither option is acceptable. He finds a vantage point, peering through a broken window. Inside, his worst fears are confirmed as he sees the girl chained. The brute strikes the child, showing no hint of mercy. He taunts her, claiming her parents abandoned her. What a charmer. His cruelty knows no bounds, even insulting her divine skill. The girl hits the floor, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and defiance. From the window, Fate can only watch, his horror turning to pure rage. She's left helpless on the cold stone, a victim of his senseless cruelty. And in her suffering, Fate sees a reflection of his own painful past. His anger boils over, but Greed's voice warns him not to act rashly. The brute reveals his plan, to sell her as a plaything for a holy night. Classy. He mocks her, asking if she's happy about her disgusting new fate. When she resists, he grabs her, threatening to end her life right there. He laughs, revealing that his previous victims didn't last very long. With a final brutal shove, he slams her head towards the ground. The brute smirks, leaving the child unconscious on the floor. Fate's knuckles turn white, his grip cracking the stone frame. He wants to rush in, but a voice of reason holds him back. Greed reminds him that acting on pure rage is a death sentence. The sword explains that stats mean nothing against raw experience. Guess this isn't a turn-based RPG. He grits his teeth, torn between his rage and the cold, hard truth. He forces himself to take a breath, agreeing to think rationally. He scans the room, desperately searching for any advantage. Then an idea forms. The crates could provide the perfect cover. But Greed warns him that the kidnapper is already on the move. With his window of opportunity closing, Fate makes his move. The young girl looks up, her eyes wide with disbelief. He offers a reassuring smile, telling her he's here to help. With a single swing, Greed shatters the chains that bind her. He tells her it's over and prepares to lead her to safety. Tears of relief stream down her face. A silent thank you. He turns back, asking if she's well enough to walk. But their escape is cut short by the kidnapper's return. The brute sneers, annoyed by this predictable turn of events. He explains his cruel method for breaking his victim's spirits. Well, this guy is just a bucket of sunshine. He stands his ground, shielding the girl from the brute's cruel taunts. The kidnapper mocks his heroic stance, ready for a fight. And Fate realizes with dawning horror that it was all a trap. The brute smirks, glad for some entertainment to break the monotony. But his body betrays him, his legs trembling with raw fear. Kasim sees his terror and mocks him for his weakness. He's trapped, knowing he can't fight and protect her at the same time. But Greed's voice cuts through the panic with a clear command. A talking sword is surprisingly good for moral support. The sword asks if he remembers what they did just moments ago. His eyes fall on the broken chains and a new plan begins to form. He grabs the girl's hand, making a desperate break for it. But he stops, turning to face the brute head on. Kasim blocks their path, declaring their little game is over. Fate tells the girl to stay back, shielding her from the danger. His grip on Greed tightens, his fear turning to resolve. The kidnapper sneers, asking if he's ready to meet his end. But Greed's voice gives the signal, and Fate charges forward. Kasim can only roar in disbelief at the boy's foolish courage. Guess he wasn't expecting the prey to fight back. Steel screams as the two blades are about to collide. And with a brutal crash, Fate meets the killer's strike. But Kasim can only stare in disbelief as the blow lands. The kidnapper falls, defeated in a single decisive strike. Greed's voice praises him for executing their plan perfectly. Fate leads the girl to safety, thanking the sword for its hint. He realizes Greed's power is absolute. It can cut through anything. But he's not done yet, demanding to know which holy night was involved. He threatens to read the man's mind if he won't talk. Guess consent isn't in his skill set. His eye glows and a name surfaces from the brute's thoughts. He holds the man, the terrible truth sinking in. The name is Hud Blelick, and Fate realizes the entire family is corrupt. His expression hardens, the name echoing in his mind. His gluttony skill roars to life, devouring the man's power. He's gained a new counterattack skill, Sharp Edge. Fate tells his talking sword to shut it, a perfectly normal reaction. He reflects on the fight, realizing he was just one move from death. With the danger gone, he finally turns to the rescued girl. He kneels down, offering a gentle smile to calm her fears. A silent agreement is made between the two of them. With the girl safe, his hunger finally makes a grand return. Finally, it's time for that well-deserved victory meal. He encourages her to eat, a warm smile on his face. After a moment's hesitation, she takes her first bite, and her entire world lights up with pure, simple joy. With that, they both dig in, a shared meal after a long night. He learns she's from an orphanage in his own slum district. Talk about a convenient commute. He walks her to the gate, ready to part ways for the night. But she stops him, and he turns back in confusion. With a bright smile, she thanks her big brother for saving her. The title catches him completely off guard, leaving him speechless. She waves goodbye, finally safe as she runs back to the nuns. He waves back, a small, unpracticed smile on his face. He walks back through the familiar, desolate streets of his home. But Greed's voice cuts in, asking about his somber expression. Fate simply says he was realizing how far he still has to go. The reality of his new job suddenly hits him with a wave of anxiety. He reminds his sword that the hearts are one of the 5 great families. Greed is unbothered, stating it's just a weapon after all, a very opinionated weapon. Fate then spirals, realizing he has nothing to wear for the big day. The next morning, he arrives at the appointed location. Dressed in his best, he prepares himself for what's to come. He hopes his new clothes are good enough not to embarrass Roxy. Greed agrees, adding that even he can look good with some effort. With his confidence slightly shaken, he heads for the Heart Mansion. He reflects on the whirlwind of the past few days, wondering if it was all a dream. The sheer scale of the Hart family estate leaves him speechless. A guard at the gate stops him, asking his business. He nervously explains he has an appointment with Roxy Hart. The guard confirms his name and leads him through the gates. Inside, the grounds are even more breathtaking than the walls. But the estate is strangely quiet, leaving him to wonder where everyone is. The guard announces his arrival to a figure in the garden. He looks up to see Roxy, who welcomes him with a warm smile. But she's not the armored knight he knows. She's simply stunning. The sight completely short-circuits his brain. Guess he wasn't prepared for this. He stammers, admitting he's just stunned by how beautiful she looks. His honest compliment catches her completely off guard. She admits that even a holy knight enjoys dressing up now and then. He sheepishly admits she almost didn't recognize him in his new clothes. For a moment, they just look at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. With the pleasantries over, she leads him deeper into the estate. Fate wonders why they're not heading into the main building, but his confusion quickly turns to stunned silence. She's led him to a memorial, a tribute to her late father. She places flowers, introducing Fate as her newest employee. With him here, she hopes the house will feel less empty. She reveals the devastating news came only 5 days ago. Her father fell in battle in the distant land of Gallia, a continent ruled by monsters far more terrifying than any he's faced. A real vacation spot, I'm sure. Fate realizes she was hiding this immense grief the day they met. He learns that fighting in Gallia is a holy knight's ultimate duty. Fate can barely imagine monsters with such devastating power, but Roxy clarifies that her father's death was far stranger. She asks if he's ever heard of the living disaster of Gallia. The name she gives him is one of legend, the Sky Dragon. It's described not as a monster, but as a natural disaster, a force that wiped out her father's entire party without warning. Talk about a bad day at the office. She explains that today is her first moment of peace since the funeral, but behind her smile, he can see the immense weight of her grief. Fate is left speechless, the terrible truth sinking in. He finally sees her not as a knight, but as a daughter in mourning. His resolve hardens. He must become strong enough to support her. She declares that she will now carry the weight of the Hart family name. And with a steady gaze, she asks if he will help her bear that burden. Fate's expression is one of unwavering determination. Before her father's memorial, he swears his undying loyalty to her cause. But deep inside, his cursed skill awakens with a familiar, insatiable hunger. He wakes the next morning in a proper bed, a new life beginning. Well, this is a definite upgrade from the floor. As he stretches, the morning sun fills his new room. For the first time, he greets the day with a genuine smile. His first day on the job begins with a polite greeting to the head gardener. He learns the trade from the older man, finding his place among the staff. Of all the tasks he's tried, he finds a simple peace in gardening. He looks to the future, already planning his next project. At night, he joins the other servants for a communal dinner. His face lights up at the sight of a proper meal with meat. His new colleagues just laugh, happy to see him eat his fill. He reflects on this new life, a world away from his past abuse. But even with a full plate, his cursed hunger begins to stir. The feeling is familiar, a chilling echo of his first kill. But this time, the gnawing emptiness is even more powerful than before. A voice calls his name, pulling him into a dark internal void. He snaps back to reality, startled by the sudden call. It's Roxy, her expression filled with gentle concern. She notes how pale he looks, but he panics at her touch. He forces a smile, insisting everything is perfectly fine. But his world dissolves into a crimson haze as the hunger takes over. He collapses, Roxy's panicked voice the last thing he hears. So much for a peaceful dinner. He tosses and turns in bed, trapped in a feverish nightmare. He jolts awake, clutching his stomach as the pain intensifies. The terrible truth sinks in. His hunger was so strong, he fainted. He sits up in bed, trying to make sense of what happened. A note on his nightstand reveals Roxy's kindness. He's overcome with embarrassment for fainting in front of her. He realizes with a start that he slept the entire day away. The night sky outside is a silent witness to his confusion. He turns to Greed, asking why his hunger is so intense. But the sword's reply is grim. It's already too late. Greed explains that gluttony once fed can never be stopped. How's that for a balanced diet? The skill will now crave more, entering a starvation mode. The word hangs in the air, a terrifying new reality for Fate. Greed tells him to look in the mirror for proof of his new state. His eyes glow a terrifying crimson, a clear sign of his starvation. The sword explains this hunger will only grow until it finally kills him. He desperately asks if he can just stop, if he can refuse to feed it. But the answer is grim. He'll either starve or turn on everyone he knows. The horrifying truth leaves him utterly speechless and terrified. Greed warns him that his body is already reaching its absolute limit. He can pretend to be a normal servant for a little while longer, but the sword reminds him that he can never truly go back. With no other choice, he runs into the night ready to hunt. He sprints through the darkened streets, a desperate man on the run. It's not exhaustion that plagues him, but an all-consuming hunger. But then, a new scent cuts through the pain, drawing him in. His predatory senses lock onto the nearest living thing, a city guard. The guard turns, offering help to the man who now sees him as prey. But the face that looks back is no longer human, twisted by starvation. The guard can only stare in horror, his kindness met with a monster. His terrifying aura sends the entire patrol into a state of pure panic. Guess hangry is a universal language. He somehow regains control, dismissing them with a simple note. As he walks away, Greed explains the source of their fear: his glowing red eyes. The sword explains that starvation mode alters his body for efficiency. Fate finally understands, but worries he's already drawn suspicion. But the guards dismiss it, chalking it up to a long shift. He agrees, realizing that acting normal is his only real cover. He continues his desperate search through the crowded city streets, but the crimson glow in his eye is a constant, burning reminder. Suddenly, a new scent cuts through the air, stopping him cold. His gaze locks onto three mysterious, cloaked figures ahead. An unsettling aura surrounds them, a darkness he can almost taste. He realizes with a chilling certainty, this is the meal he's been hunting for. He stops in his tracks, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. It's Raphael and her crew, the last people he ever wanted to see again. They slip into a darkened alley, clearly trying to avoid being seen. Fate wonders what kind of trouble they're stirring up now. Nothing good, that's for sure. After all, they're supposed to be prestigious holy knights. But their suspicious behavior tells a very different story. A part of him wants to follow, to uncover their secrets. But his hunger is a far more immediate and deadly threat. He sprints along the city wall, desperately searching for a target. Even the guards below smell tempting, a sign of how far he's fallen. He overhears a group of warriors planning their own night hunt. Their confidence only fuels his own desperate, gnawing need. He has to get out of the city, and he has to do it now. But his frantic exit catches the attention of the wrong people. The warriors corner him, mocking his cheap gear and solo mission. They dangle an offer of help, only to snatch it away with a cruel laugh. How nice of them. He ignores them, bolting from the city and into the moonlit forest. His first kill is swift, a desperate strike against a lone goblin. But as the creature falls, he knows it's not nearly enough. The hunger demands more, a roaring void that one soul cannot fill. His eyes burn red, a single thought consuming his mind. More. He tears through the goblin ranks, a whirlwind of desperate violence. The night falls silent, leaving only a field of fallen creatures. He stands in the aftermath, the brutal hunt finally over. The gnawing ache has subsided, but only by a fraction. He sees his reflection in the blade. The crimson glow remains. He realizes with dawning dread that goblins are no longer enough. To survive, he'll have to find stronger, more dangerous prey. Greed explains this newfound strength is just a tool for his curse. His next target is set, the evolved hobgoblins of the deep forest. He recalls the 3 types of hobgoblins he'll face. The real threat comes from the archers and their poison-tipped arrows. He's thankful for the knowledge a fellow servant once shared. From the shadows, he finally lays eyes on his new prey. His crimson eyes glow as he activates his appraisal skill. The skill reveals their stats: a fighter and a high stamina guard. He spots a lone sentry, fast asleep and completely vulnerable. A classic rookie mistake. With a silent apology, he moves in for a swift, merciless strike. The sentry falls, but its companion wakes to a horrifying sight. It tries to sound the alarm, but fate won't give it the chance. Gluttony roars to life, granting him new skills and a deeper satisfaction. But the hunt is far from over. He's ready for the next round. He stands in the aftermath, the body count now at 45. And then a sudden, profound change washes over him. The hunger is gone, replaced by a wave of pure relief. He leans against a tree, the terrifying starvation mode finally over. But Greed warns him that the danger isn't gone just yet. Guess the hangry stat boost wore off. Fate knows the sword is right. He can't afford to be careless. With a grunt, he finds a safe perch high in the trees. He reflects on the sheer number of kills it took to feel normal again. Greed's voice gives him a grim ultimatum: hunt regularly or turn on others. He vows never to let that terrifying hunger control him again. But a sudden, heavy thud echoes through the silent forest. The sound grows louder, closer, shaking the very trees around him. Fate snaps to attention, his brief moment of peace shattered. Below him, a massive hobgoblin emerges from the darkness. The creature lets out a guttural roar, its presence dominating the clearing. But it's what the monster is holding that makes his blood run cold: a human body. He recognizes the man as one of the arrogant warriors from the gate. Looks like their big talk didn't save them from becoming monster chow. With a grim expression, Fate activates his appraisal skill to face this new threat. The appraisal reveals a terrifying truth. The Goblin King, he knows this rare encounter is supposed to be a death sentence, but his eyes lock onto its skill: regeneration. A prize worth fighting for. He weighs his own stats, wondering if he finally has a chance. With his mind made up, he begins his descent from the tree. The monster stands over its victim, unaware of the hunter above. The king then begins a gruesome feast on the fallen warrior. Blood splatters across the forest floor, a grim testament to its power. Dinner and a show, I guess. But then the monster sits, as if in quiet meditation. Fate can only watch in horror, his resolve momentarily shaken. Greed's voice taunts him, asking if he's finally scared. The sword reminds him this is the fate of all who fall to monsters, but Fate has had enough of the lecture, telling the sword to stop. He admits that he always knew this was a possibility, but knowing and seeing the brutal aftermath are two different things. His fear hardens into a cold, unwavering resolve. He forms a plan, intending to use the trees for cover. He watches from the tall grass, waiting for the perfect moment. The Goblin King sits unaware, a perfect target in the clearing. Guess meditation doesn't improve situational awareness. His hand tightens on his hilt, ready to make his move. Greed's voice advises caution, and Fate agrees to take it slow. He moves with silent purpose, his eyes locked on his unsuspecting prey. Using the trees for cover, he closes the distance without a sound. The night is still, a silent witness to the violence about to unfold. With a final command from Greed, he bursts from the shadows to strike. He thinks the fight is over, but the sword warns him not to celebrate just yet. The Goblin King rises, proving it takes more than one hit to kill a boss. It unleashes a furious roar, its power surging for a devastating counterattack. Greed screams a warning as Fate realizes he's completely outmatched. But just as the blow is about to land, a new player enters the game. But Fate manages to parry the devastating blow just in time. He can only curse, the force of the impact rattling him. He stumbles back, realizing how close he came to death. But the Goblin King roars, its body glowing with rage. It lunges forward again, faster and more furious than before. Fate is forced onto the defensive, dodging the wild swings. He slides under a massive blow that could have crushed him. The ground cracks where the club lands, inches from his face. Guess the king isn't a fan of subtlety. He looks back, the monster's immense power finally sinking in. The king's grip tightens, preparing for the final killing strike. But Greed's voice cuts through his fear, telling him to trust it. With a deep breath, Fate agrees to put his life in the sword's hands. He shouts his trust, a desperate leap of faith against a monster. Man and monster charge, a collision of desperation and raw power. But instead of blocking, Fate's blade slices deep into the king's flesh. His eyes are filled with a grim, unwavering focus. He slides past the giant, his attack a resounding success. The Goblin King roars in agony, a massive wound now on its shoulder. Guess the regeneration skill has its limits. Fate pivots, ready to press his sudden, impossible advantage. But the monster's rage only intensifies, its eyes burning with hatred. With a final desperate lunge, Fate brings the monster down. The Goblin King's death cry echoes through the silent forest. And once again, Gluttony activates, devouring its soul for the regeneration skill. Fate can only stare, his mind struggling to process the impossible victory. He collapses in exhaustion, and Greed offers a rare, simple compliment. Fate believes this kill is enough to unlock the sword's first rank. Greed explains that it can evolve by absorbing stats from its wielder. But the price is steep. It wants every single point Fate has earned so far. Talk about a high-maintenance weapon. Fate is stunned, but the sword reminds him that its name is Greed for a reason, and it seems the demanding blade has even more to say. Greed delivers a final, shocking ultimatum. Unlock its power or be cast aside. The sword asks him to choose, grow stronger alone, or grow with it. Fate sits in the quiet forest, the weight of the choice upon him. A small smile crosses his face as he marvels at the sword's ambition. But for him, there's no real decision to be made. He stands, declaring that greed is his one and only partner. A bit dramatic for a piece of metal, but here we are. The sword accepts his choice, promising he won't regret it. A pact is sealed. From now on, they'll face this world together. A brilliant golden light erupts as his stats pour into the blade. The power surges, and fate embraces his new shared destiny. A brilliant flash of light marks the transfer of power. Fate stares in horror as his stats are reset to almost nothing. But greed's voice confirms the sacrifice was not in vain. The blade has transformed, taking on a powerful new shape. It's no longer a sword, but a glowing, magical bow. Greed explains it can now serve him in more ways than one. A confident smile spreads across Fate's face. This is a worthy trade. He realizes this is just the first rank, and greed confirms there are more to unlock. But the sword warns him the next evolution will cost him dearly. A small price to pay for looking this cool. Suddenly, the weapon's confident tone vanishes, leaving Fate utterly confused. Greed's voice cuts through the night with a sudden, urgent warning. A crystal arrow whizzes past his head, a deadly surprise attack. Another shot lands at his feet, pinning him in place. He realizes with dawning horror that he's being hunted. From the shadows, an unseen enemy has him in their sights. He dives for cover as Greed screams another warning. Looks like his victory party is officially canceled. He scans the darkness, desperately trying to find his attackers. Greed tells him to fight back, explaining the bow's unique power. The sword clarifies that this new form doesn't need physical arrows. With a determined cry, Fate draws back and summons an arrow of pure light. He lets loose his own arrow, a bolt of pure energy. But his aim is off, striking a nearby goblin instead. He hears the creature's final cry, a clear sign he missed his mark. He can only offer a sheepish smile. So much for a grand counterattack. A voice from the shadows mocks his terrible aim. But Greed reveals its new form comes with some handy perks. With the immediate threat gone, he decides it's time to head home. He explains that a level 1 killing a king would raise too many questions. But then a brilliant idea strikes him for the perfect cover story. The next morning, a knock echoes through the Hart estate. He groggily answers the knock, still half asleep from his brutal night. But the sight on the other side of the door snaps him wide awake. It's Roxy, looking radiant even in her armor, holding a basket of fresh fruit. She asks how he's feeling, her voice laced with genuine concern. Fate is completely flustered, caught off guard by her sudden visit. He insists he's fine, but his panicked reaction isn't very convincing. She explains she came to check on him, bringing a gift from her family's lands. These grapes are from the Hart territory, delivered just this morning. A little taste of home, I guess. He makes small talk, and she lights up, describing her beautiful homeland. She plucks one from the basket, a simple gesture of kindness. She offers him a single grape, a simple taste of her home. Fate can only blush, completely overwhelmed by her kindness. He agrees they look delicious, a quiet moment between them. But their peace is shattered by the arrival of the head maid. Looks like fun time is over. Her expression is stern, a clear sign that Roxy is on a tight schedule. Roxy agrees, her pleasant morning suddenly cut short. She waves goodbye, telling him to rest and recover. But just as she's about to leave, she remembers something. She invites him to join her on her upcoming trip to her homeland. The offer leaves Fate standing alone, completely stunned into silence. He's still flustered, thinking about how busy Roxy always is. He wonders how a commoner like him could ever truly help her. He quickly dismisses the thought, shaking his head in disbelief. But then he remembers he has the entire day off. A new resolve fills him. He knows just what to do. He heads to the merchant district for a well-deserved break. With time to kill, he decides to browse the local stalls. He figures his appraisal skill could be useful for more than just fighting. Smart shopping is a skill too, you know. His eyes land on a skull mask with a very useful ability. With his purchase made, he walks away with a new secret identity. He knows his nightly hunts will be a lot easier with a secret identity. But his quiet stroll is interrupted by rumors of a goblin massacre. The townsfolk speculate it's the work of a powerful wandering monster. But a familiar, hated name sends a jolt of anger through him. Blelick. He knows exactly who they're talking about, and it's not good news. The people feel safe, but Fate knows the Blelicks are the real monsters. He can only sneer, knowing the truth behind their prestigious name. But this is also an opportunity to finally uncover their corruption. And as for the Goblin King, his little cover story is already in motion. He's anonymously donated the proof of his kill to the local orphanage. A hero in the shadows, I guess. The townsfolk are buzzing about the rare and valuable donation. And at the orphanage, the children are filled with pure, unbridled joy. Fate overhears people talking about the feast the kids enjoyed. A quiet, satisfied smile spreads across his face. But now the entire city is searching for the mysterious hero. He plays along, hoping they find the generous stranger. Good thing he bought that mask. That night, under the cover of darkness, the hunt begins again. His new identity allows him to move without fear of being recognized. He cuts through his foes, a whirlwind of silent, deadly force. Greed notes that he's getting used to this dangerous double life. He clarifies that this is about survival, not enjoyment. With his hunger sated, his thoughts turn back to Raphael's crew. He's certain they're planning something sinister, but has no proof. Greed reminds him that they're too smart to leave a trail of evidence. Fate realizes he'll have to force their hand to lure them into a trap. And just then, a new group of players enters the field. Talk about perfect timing. He watches from the shadows as 3 adventurers enter the woods. The trio cautiously approaches a small group of goblins. From above, the stage is set for a classic monster encounter. But Fate remains hidden, a silent observer with a plan of his own. The adventurers bicker amongst themselves, a classic case of rookie jitters. They're more worried about the rumored monster than the actual goblins. With a shaky battle cry, they prepare to make their move. The trio charges forward, ready to prove their worth against the goblins. But in a flash, something blurs right past them in the darkness. They can only stare in shock, their attack completely forgotten. A cloaked figure stands over the fallen goblins, a phantom in the moonlight. The mysterious hunter lands before them, a silent, terrifying presence. Guess they found their wandering monster. With their courage shattered, the adventurers turn and flee for their lives. They scream in terror, realizing the rumors were terrifyingly true. The adventurer's screams echo through the forest, calling him a lich. He's satisfied with his performance. The rumor has officially been born. Greed confirms his disguise is perfect, if a little cliché. He knows if he keeps this up, his true targets will have to investigate. The memory of his tormentors only strengthens his resolve. But a sudden warning from Greed snaps him back to the present. A new presence is tearing through the forest at an impossible speed. The sword screams a warning, but it's almost too late. A massive white-haired creature storms past, crushing a goblin without a glance. He recognizes this new, terrifying foe. The Goblin Queen. Looks like his night just got a lot more complicated. Greed's voice warns him that something is wrong with the enraged queen. Fate's eyes lock onto a familiar necklace around her neck. He lands softly on the forest floor, the truth finally clicking into place. This isn't a random encounter. She's here to avenge her fallen husband. She charges forward, a whirlwind of pure, unrestrained fury. Fate braces himself, meeting her terrifying, grief-fueled attack head-on. He parries the blow, the impact sending a shock wave through the clearing. But her raw power sends him sliding back, forced onto the defensive. Guess she hits harder than her late husband. The queen lets out a devastating roar, her rage shaking the very trees. A terrifying, blood-red aura erupts from her body as she prepares to strike again. Greed warns him that her rage has made her completely unpredictable. But Fate dismisses the warning, his confidence unwavering. He declares that he's not the same weakling he once was. He leaps into the air, taking aim with his powerful new bow. A bolt of pure energy materializes, ready to be unleashed. He lets the arrow fly, a brilliant streak against the night sky. The shot finds its mark, striking the queen with devastating force. She stumbles back, her roar of agony echoing through the forest. He descends from the sky, a phantom against the full moon. A bit dramatic, but it gets the job done. He offers a quiet apology to his defeated, grief-stricken foe. And with a final, pained cry, the queen's life begins to fade. His gluttony skill roars to life, feasting on her grief-fueled power. He offers a cold farewell, a message for her fallen king. With a heavy thud, the Goblin Queen falls, her vengeance denied. But a sudden noise from the trees snaps him back to attention. He spots the 3 adventurers from earlier, running back into the clearing. Well, so much for a quiet exit. Greed points out the obvious. His fight wasn't exactly subtle. But for Fate, this is perfect. The more ruckus he makes, the faster his true targets will appear. A few days pass, the chaos of the forest replaced by peaceful skies. Fate continues his double life. A humble servant by day, a ruthless hunter by night. He reflects on his plan, wondering why the Holy Knights are so quiet. He decides against telling Roxy, wanting to gather more proof on his own. But his thoughts are interrupted by a familiar figure at the gate. He can hardly believe his eyes. It's Roxy, but not as he's ever seen her. He asks if she's okay, but she just smiles, saying his timing is perfect.
She announces that she has a new job for him, leaving Fate confused.
And it's not just any job, but a top-secret special mission. Sounds legit. He can only stare, wondering what a holy knight could possibly need from him. With a dramatic flourish, she reveals his new task, inspecting the people. Fate is left completely baffled by her strange and cryptic request. She leans in, whispering that this is a top-secret inspection. She explains it's her duty to understand the lives of her people. He praises her noble idea, and she declares he'll be her escort. Before he can protest, he's unceremoniously dragged along for the ride. She tells him to drop the formalities and pulls him towards the city. And just like that, they're in the city, ready for their inspection. She explores the market stalls with a genuine childlike wonder. He realizes this is the first time he's seen her truly smile. A nice change from all the monster slaying and political drama. He sees that beneath the armor, she's just a girl who wants a day off. With a new resolve, he vows to make sure she enjoys her day. Their inspection leads them to a jeweler's stall filled with sparkling gems. Roxy calls a silver piece a bargain, but Fate's wallet strongly disagrees. But his attention is drawn to a different, less polished kind of treasure. The shopkeeper explains their gem ores, a simple game of chance. For 10 copper coins, they can try their luck at the world's oldest loot box. Roxy is completely captivated by the idea of a hidden prize, but Fate decides to tip the odds in his favor with his appraisal skill. He picks out a guaranteed winner and offers it to Roxy as a gift. She's stunned by the gesture, a thank you for all her kindness. With their prizes in hand, it's time to see what's hidden inside. Roxy celebrates her win, much to the shock of Fate and the shopkeeper. She holds the gem up, admiring its brilliant, sparkling light. She calls out to Fate, her eyes fixed on the beautiful stone. With a gentle smile, she promises to treasure his gift always. Fate can only blush, happy that his small gesture meant so much. But their peaceful day is interrupted by a cry for help. They find a small lost boy crying alone in the street. While Fate sees trouble, Roxy sees someone who needs their help. She kneels down, gently asking the boy what happened. Her kindness quickly turns into an intense, full-scale interrogation. Guess subtlety isn't a holy knight skill. Her intense approach only makes the poor kid cry even harder. Fate steps in, offering a gentler approach to find his mother. The boy looks up, a glimmer of hope in his tear-filled eyes. With a reassuring smile, Fate promises they can count on him. As they walk, Roxy can't help but feel a little left out. They spend the entire day searching, but find no sign of his mother. As twilight falls, they're forced to admit they've failed. Fate realizes they'll have to resume the search in the morning. The boy's hope fades, replaced by the quiet sobs of a lost child. Roxy can only watch, her heart aching for the boy's despair. The boy's cries echo through the square, a heartbreaking sound. They exchange a worried glance, their day of fun now a serious mission. But then, a frantic voice cuts through the evening air. A woman sprints towards them, her eyes locked on her lost son. The boy's face lights up as he's finally reunited with his mother. Fate and Roxy share a smile, their difficult task finally complete. The grateful mother bows, offering her deepest thanks for their help. The boy thanks them with a bright smile, a new title for his saviors. They wave goodbye as the pair disappears into the twilight streets. Fate can't help but smile, remarking on the boy's sudden attachment. Fate is taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor. Roxy just smiles, happy to have spent the day with him. He turns away, completely flustered by her simple kindness. She asks what's wrong, but he can only stammer that it's nothing. But their day is cut short by the headmaid's stern reminder. Fun's over, kids. As they rush back, Roxy suddenly remembers her earlier promise. With a bright smile, she officially invites him to her homeland. Fate can't help but agree, a genuine smile on his face. He formally accepts, honored to be her guest for the trip. But later, her sudden question catches him completely off guard. She notices his somber mood, asking why he isn't happy. He quickly covers, insisting he's looking forward to the trip. He changes the subject to food, praising the grapes she gave him. She teases him, noting his particular fondness for food. A man after my own heart. She explains the land's history, a source of great pride for her family. He's moved by her story, sharing a quiet, appreciative moment. But her expression darkens, revealing the harvest attracts unwanted attention. She describes the kobolds, intelligent pack hunters drawn by the scent. She explains it's an annual threat they must always be prepared for. But his stomach interrupts, earning him an amused look from Roxy. Guess all this talk of monsters worked up an appetite. Fate realizes his curse is already responding to the new threat. But their conversation is cut short by a sudden violent jolt. The driver screams in terror as Roxy leans out to see the cause. They both look on in shock, their peaceful journey shattered. A pack of red-eyed monsters has completely surrounded their carriage. But Roxy quickly corrects him. These aren't kobolds at all. They're arrowwolves, territorial beasts drawn by their scent. She calls his name, stepping forward to shield him from the danger. With a determined gaze, she tells him to stand back and let her handle it. A holy knight's work is never done, I guess. In a flash of steel, the holy knight prepares to enter the fray. She calmly notes that these wolves are weaker than kobolds. With a graceful leap, she dives right into the heart of the pack. Her blade finds its mark with brutal, undeniable precision. She cuts through her foes, a whirlwind of light and steel. Fate can only watch from the carriage, completely mesmerized. He realizes the title of Holy Knight is more than earned. With the threat gone, they finally arrive at the Heart Estate. Roxy is greeted by her mother, a warm but unexpected welcome. Guess even holy knights have to answer to their moms. But her mother's attention quickly turns to the new face, and Fate is suddenly put on the spot, meeting the family matriarch. Roxy introduces him as her new servant, and Fate offers a panicked introduction. Her mother, Aisha Hart, offers a warm and gentle welcome. He remembers hearing she was ill, but sees only kindness in her eyes. But her gentle demeanor vanishes as she asks the million-dollar question. The question sends both of them into a flustered panic. Well, that's one way to break the ice. He breathes a sigh of relief, realizing the innocent intent. But his answer is anything but casual, a vow of undying loyalty. He knows their stations are worlds apart, a painful reality. But he can still dedicate his life to serving her from the shadows. His heartfelt declaration leaves the Holy Knight completely stunned. Her daughter bolts for her room, leaving Fate utterly bewildered. He's left wondering what he said, but Aisha calls out to him. She asks him to take good care of Roxy, and he vows that he will. As the sun sets, a quiet peace settles over the Hart family lands. Fate realizes he spent the entire day helping with the grape harvest. He smiles to himself, happy to have been of some use. But as dusk falls, he knows it's time to hurry back. Suddenly, a lone figure appears on the path carrying a massive axe. Talk about a scenic stroll. The warrior's fierce red eyes and powerful weapons signal a new threat. Fate freezes. The mention of red eyes a chilling reminder of his own curse. He realizes her crimson eyes are just like his in starvation mode. The chilling connection sends a jolt of pure panic through him. Even greed is impressed, but the warrior suddenly calls him out. Fate is completely stunned by the sudden direct address. He tries his appraisal skill, but it reveals absolutely nothing. She snaps him out of his trance, demanding his full attention. He can only ask what this mysterious stranger wants from him. She dismisses him with a cryptic remark, leaving him baffled. Guess straight answers isn't her strong suit. She leaves him the kobolds as a gift, declaring he now owes her. But Fate is left alone, demanding to know what she meant. The warrior offers a final, cryptic promise that they'll meet again. Fate can only watch as her silhouette disappears over the horizon. Her crimson eyes haunt him, a terrifying mirror of his own curse. But Roxy's voice suddenly cuts through his dark thoughts. She runs to his side, explaining that she'd been searching for him. She immediately notices his fear, asking what has him so shaken. He stammers a denial, but his panicked face tells a different story. Real smooth. Roxy can only look on, sensing that something is deeply wrong. She realizes he saw a galleon, wondering what one is doing here. The name clicks for Fate, a warrior from the land of monsters. He asks if the galleons are truly on the brink of extinction. Roxy explains they were the original inhabitants of the monster continent, a people who once ruled a great nation, now lost to history. She admits this is the first time she's ever seen one in person. Her gaze follows the path of the mysterious white-haired warrior, but she quickly changes the subject, urging him to head back. As the sun sets, a quiet peace returns to the Hart Estate. Inside, a grand dinner is prepared to mark the end of the harvest. Roxy calls out to him, her smile warm and inviting, and Fate is fired up, ready to serve her with renewed dedication. Roxy looks over, a quiet invitation in her eyes. She points to the seat beside her, a place of honor at the table. Fate is completely stunned by the unbelievable offer. The other servants can only stare, shocked by the breach of etiquette. But they quickly recover, physically forcing him into the seat. He sits beside her, a nervous wreck next to the smiling knight. She tells him to forget the rules and simply enjoy the meal. With her permission, he eagerly agrees to dig in. He wastes no time, his cheeks full as Roxy watches with amusement. Guess his gluttony skill applies to fine dining, too. His enthusiasm brings a genuine, heartfelt laugh from the Holy Knight. He gives a thumbs up, lost in the joy of a good meal. Later, a maid escorts him through the quiet halls. She thanks him, saying Roxy hasn't been this happy in ages. He reflects on her burdens and renews his vow to support her. That night, he heads out to hunt, his thoughts on the galleon warrior. He tells Greed she had the same crimson eyes as his starvation mode. He asks what it means that his appraisal skill failed on her. Greed's answer is cryptic, promising he'll understand in time. The vague promises leave him with more questions than answers. But his thoughts are cut short by a sudden noise in the bushes. The noise reveals itself. 2 kobolds on a nightly patrol. He immediately activates his appraisal skill to size up his new prey. The stats are impressive, but his eyes lock onto a valuable new skill. A predatory smile spreads across his face. This is a perfect opportunity. Greed's voice gives the command, urging him to strike first. But fate is already moving, charging in with a confident battle cry. He cuts them down with brutal efficiency, a whirlwind of dark energy. His gluttony skill awakens, turning their strength into his next meal. A notification confirms it. The strength up skill is now his. But the brief satisfaction fades. 2 kills are no longer enough to sate him. He realizes his nightly hunts have put the entire pack on high alert, and his thoughts immediately turn to Roxy's safety. He can only hope she won't be in danger because of him. The next day, the mood is much lighter as the harvest begins. Roxy addresses the workers with fate awkwardly by her side. He throws himself into the work, eager to prove his worth, and seeing her so happy makes all the hard work worth it. But as night falls, his other life calls to him once more. He knows Roxy hunts tomorrow, so he'll clear the path for her tonight. A thankless job for a thankless hero. His hunt leads him to a deep ravine, the heart of their territory. He lets the scouts go, knowing they'll lead him to the main force. And right on cue, an entire army of red-eyed monsters emerges. At their head stands a massive figure, the alpha of the pack. Fate is unfamiliar with the term, a sign of his inexperience. Greed explains it's a named monster and tells him to use his skill. The appraisal reveals a level 50 boss with stats in the 6 digits. Well, that escalated quickly. Greed warns him that this army is far too powerful for Roxy alone. If they aren't stopped now, the entire Heart territory will fall. With a look of pure determination, Fate accepts the impossible challenge. He unleashes his power, vowing to devour the entire army himself. The kobold leader roars, rallying its pack for the coming hunt. From the shadows, Fate observes their cautious, organized movements. He activates his appraisal skill to get a better read on the grunts. The stats are high, but it's their agility up skill that poses the real threat. Greed's voice confirms it. The hunt is officially on. Fate knows a direct fight is suicide. He'll lure them into a trap. He moves through the ravine, a silent shadow against the stone. But a single twitch of an ear reveals his position has been compromised. Guess stealth isn't his strong suit. He's forced to move, a blur of motion against the charging pack. He silences their alarm with a single, perfectly aimed shot. Gluttony activates, granting him a new agility up skill. He feels the power surge through him, a thrilling, undeniable rush. It's as if his cursed skill is celebrating the new meal. Curious about his progress, he decides to check his status. The numbers are staggering. He's nearly as strong as the alpha. He just needs one more and he's not waiting for an invitation. But the monster catches the arrow with impossible speed. Fate can only stare in disbelief at its incredible reflexes. The creature lets out a howl, alerting the entire pack to his presence. His cover is blown, and now he's facing the army head-on. So much for the element of surprise. The entire pack emerges, a sea of red eyes and bared teeth. Greed's voice asks the obvious question, is he really going to fight this? But Fate's mind flashes to the kind faces of the Heart estate staff, and to the gentle smile of the woman he swore to protect. He knows he can't lose this new home he's found. With a defiant roar, he declares that retreat is not an option. Greed confirms their only strategy, avoid the alpha and thin the herd. Fate already knows the plan, ready to hunt for his final stat boost. No time for a lecture from his talking sword. He unleashes a barrage of light, a storm of golden arrows. The attack rains down, a devastating opening move against the horde. He grits his teeth, knowing he's still not strong enough. Greed offers some helpful backseat gaming, telling him to switch weapons. He unleashes a volley of light, keeping the horde at bay. But he realizes a frontal assault on the alpha is completely useless. The pack roars, a sea of red eyes closing in on him. But a sudden brilliant idea brings a smile to his face. He switches to his sword, meeting the charge head-on. He dodges and weaves, a blur of deadly precision. His blade cuts through the ranks, a dance of crimson and steel. But his rampage has finally drawn the alpha's full, furious attention. The alpha lunges, its fist glowing with raw, untamed power. The blow connects, tearing a gash across his shoulder. But he uses the momentum, flipping over its back in a desperate gamble. His blade slices deep, a crimson arc against the monster's hide. He lands behind it, his eyes burning with a new resolve. But the alpha is far from finished, its hand glowing for another strike. Fate raises his sword, bracing for the devastating impact. He can only grit his teeth against the overwhelming force. Guess his stat boost wasn't quite enough. The ground shatters as he's driven back by the sheer power. He's slammed into the rock wall, the breath knocked from his lungs. The alpha stands triumphant, its red aura a sign of pure dominance. He struggles to focus, his mind screaming at him to get up. Another devastating blow slams into the ground where he just lay. He can only marvel at the monster's overwhelming, insane power. The alpha closes in, ready to finish off its seemingly defeated prey. Its foot comes down, a final brutal stomp to end his life. But with a defiant roar, he catches the blow with his bare hands. He strains against the weight, refusing to be crushed so easily. And in a flash of crimson light, he drives his blade home. His stats skyrocket, and he declares his victory over the alpha. But the alpha's blue eyes burn with rage, and the pack is far from broken. A quick status check confirms it. He's finally on the monster's level. But he can feel the hatred of the entire pack focused solely on him. Greed's voice warns him not to get cocky. One mistake could still be his last. The alpha charges, a blur of red fury tearing down the ravine. Fate can only watch in shock at its impossible, terrifying speed. The monster's claws glow, ready to rip him to absolute shreds. He dodges just in time, realizing it was aiming for a fatal blow. He's forced to retreat, the alpha relentlessly closing the distance. Guess round 2 is officially on. But running isn't an option. He pivots, ready to meet the charge head-on. He realizes stats mean nothing against pure combat experience. That last strike wasn't just brute force, it was a technique. Greed's voice cuts in, telling him to focus on its skill. The appraisal reveals a deadly art that destroys from within. It all clicks. This 1-inch art is the source of its power. But knowing the problem doesn't mean he knows how to solve it. Greed gives a simple, urgent command. Switch to the bow. The sword's warning is grim. Change tactics or die. So much for a pep talk. With a frustrated cry, he unleashes the bow's true power. A bolt of light finds its mark, but not on the alpha. The alpha absorbs the life force of its fallen comrade, healing its wound. Fate realizes his ranged attacks are useless, but getting closer is a death sentence. Greed boasts it could end this in one hit, but Fate is a little busy trying not to die. The sword offers a solution, another power-up, but it's going to cost him. The price is a mere 10% of his stats. You know, just a small fee. But the alpha isn't waiting, charging forward with a furious, earth-shaking roar. Its eyes glow with a cold, calculated rage, ready to end this now. Fate grits his teeth, his desperation turning into grim resolve. With a defiant shout, he accepts the deal, trusting his greedy partner one more time. And with the pact sealed, Greed begins to feast on his power for the final shot. Fate can only stare as the bow transforms in his hands. It's now a massive weapon, crackling with raw, untamed power. Greed tells him to stop gawking and unleash its new power. With a desperate roar, Fate pours his remaining strength into the shot. A devastating beam of light erupts, a final, all-or-nothing attack. The blast finds its mark, tearing through the alpha's defenses. The monster is completely engulfed in the overwhelming power. The dust settles and Fate collapses as Gluttony devours its prey. A bit of an overkill, but effective. But his victory is cut short by a sudden, agonizing pain. His body convulses as his cursed skill unleashes a new kind of hell. He screams in agony, feeling like his body is being torn apart from the inside. Greed explains that Gluttony is overexcited from its high-quality meal. The sword warns that if he fails, he'll be completely consumed by his own power. He hits the ground hard, the power surge completely overwhelming him. His body goes limp, lost to the crimson tide of his own cursed skill. But the pain comes with a reward, a massive stat boost and a new combat skill. Talk about a painful level up. He finally comes to, gasping for air under the quiet night sky. Greed's voice chimes in, asking if he enjoyed his near-death experience. Fate makes it clear that he'd rather not have a repeat performance. But then a sudden realization hits him. He may have gone a little overboard. He stands at the edge of a canyon he just carved from the earth. Fate panics about the mess, but Greed calls it a necessary win. The sword's sense of time is a little skewed, to say the least. He can only sigh, leaving the new landmark for future generations. The next morning, the Heart Estate prepares for the hunt. Roxy stands ready, prepared to lead the charge against the kobolds. But our hero is fast asleep. Recovering from his secret war, he jolts awake with a familiar panic, realizing he's overslept. He bolts from his room, terrified he's already failed her. But he's met by the warm, teasing smile of a familiar maid. He asks for Roxy, but the maid explains she's already gone hunting. A wave of disappointment hits him. He wanted to be by her side. The maid reassures him, saying Roxy herself told him to rest. But her kindness only fuels his frustration. He feels like a burden, the only one not helping her. His resolve hardens. He has to be there to protect her. With her blessing, he bolts out the door to join the party. Guess he's not getting fired for this. But the maid's voice calls out, trying to stop him. He runs with everything he has, desperate to reach her in time. He finally spots her, but she's not hunting. She's clearing a path. She turns, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. He stammers an explanation, having rushed to find her. She reminds him of the danger, but he refuses to stay behind. He couldn't just sit back while she faced the threat alone. His simple, earnest words leave her completely speechless. He just wants to help, even if it's just a little. But the heartfelt moment quickly turns awkward for our boy. He looks over the carnage, a grim reminder of his secret war. A perfectly normal thing to find on your morning stroll. She finally asks the obvious question, what happened here? But she explains the path was already cleared when they arrived. Roxy surveys the carnage, unable to explain the devastation. But she has a theory. It was the work of the Galleon girl. Fate can only sweat, hoping his face doesn't give him away. She explains the Galleons are a powerful race, capable of such feats. He's just grateful she's created the perfect cover story for him. Talk about a lucky break. She admits it's just a guess, but no one else could be this strong. His mind flashes back to the mysterious warrior's parting words. He feels a strange debt to the woman now taking credit for his war. With the threat gone, a quiet peace settles over the Hart estate. Roxy tells him to get some rest, and he offers his thanks. She offers him a heartfelt thanks, calling him by a new nickname. He can only look away, brushing off the praise with a quiet smile. Later, he walks the quiet halls, lost in his own thoughts. But a sudden voice makes him stop dead in his tracks. It's Aisha, Roxy's mother, who greets him with a gentle smile. He's concerned for her health, but she insists she's feeling better. She asks for a private word, and Fate can only agree. In her room, the mood shifts to something far more serious. Well, this can't be good. She delivers a devastating truth. She doesn't have much time left. His protest is cut short as a coughing fit proves her words are true. She explains she was only out of bed because of her concern for Roxy. After losing her husband, it's only natural for a mother to worry. But she knows her own body, and she knows her time is short. Fate can only ask why she's entrusting him with this heavy secret. She smiles, believing he's the one who can give Roxy the support she needs. She explains that Roxy is still reeling from the shock of her father's death. But when Fate is around, she sees her daughter truly smile again. A mother always knows, I guess. Fate is filled with doubt, believing he's not worthy of such a role. He can protect her from the shadows, but his cursed skill feels wrong. But Aisha takes his hand, a silent plea for him to accept this burden. Fate is completely stunned by her heavy, dying request. She reassures him, saying it's not as difficult as he thinks. She explains that power and status are meaningless in this. All that truly matters is the will to protect someone. Her words echo in his mind, a simple but profound truth. With her final plea, she places all her faith in him. No pressure, kid. Fate can only look down, the weight of her trust settling on him. He wonders if he can truly handle this duty as they prepare to leave. But he knows he won't have an answer for her anytime soon. Meanwhile, a familiar group of knights ventures into the forest. Looks like trouble is back in town. Rafal's lackeys are out hunting, eager to pay off some new gear. Their path leads them right into the heart of the carnage. But they find a field of slaughter, far beyond what they expected. And from the shadows, the rumored monster makes its grand entrance. The knights can only scream in terror as Corpsey the Lich appears. Real creative, guys. Fate's plan is working perfectly. The rumor now has a name. But by day, he's back to his humble life at the Hart estate. He sees Roxy heading out, a holy knight with endless duties. He can only watch her go, realizing she never gets a break. Lost in thought, his distraction leads to a clumsy, sudden accident. The maid rushes over, asking if he's okay after the crash. He realizes his new stats are a side effect he needs to control. Guess super strength doesn't come with a manual. She's just relieved that he wasn't injured in the accident. He's touched by her concern, even though it was his mistake. But his stomach growls, leading to a very awkward moment. She teases him about being hungry, and he can only laugh it off. But by night, the clumsy servant is gone, replaced by a ruthless hunter. He's hunted so much, but the gnawing emptiness is still not satisfied. Greed explains that his skill now craves a higher quality of prey. The sword's cryptic words suggest this hunger is becoming a whole new beast. He looks down at the carnage, knowing this is just the beginning. But a sudden sharp pain makes him flinch behind the mask. He clutches his face as a burning sensation sears his right eye. In the reflection of his blade, he sees a terrifying crimson glow. This is a new state, half-starvation mode, and it's only getting started. He can only agree. His cursed hunger is about to get much worse. Greed's voice warns him that his time is quickly running out. The sword tells him he must now choose his path very carefully. The next day, he tries to hide the change with a simple bandage. Guess, "My eye is glowing with cursed energy" isn't a valid sick day excuse. He plays it off as a clumsy accident, desperate to keep his secret safe. The head gardener sees right through his flimsy excuse. But he agrees to let fate work, heading off to another area. Fate puts on a brave face, eager to seem useful. But as he works, his thoughts turn dark, back to his curse. He knows the low-level hunts are no longer enough to feed his hunger. A sudden movement catches his attention, pulling him from his thoughts. It's Roxy returning from another long day of official duties. But she walks past the main house, heading for a familiar, somber place. He watches from the trees as she visits her father's memorial, but his quiet observation is cut short as she turns, spotting him in the shadows. "Busted." She calls out his name, her voice soft but clear. She immediately asks about his eye, her concern genuine. He brushes it off, but she urges him to be more careful. As she turns to leave, he clenches his fist, unable to let it go. He asks if she's okay, sensing a deep sadness behind her smile. But she dismisses his concern, insisting that everything is fine. He quickly changes the subject, worried about the head gardener. "Real smooth, kid." But her thoughts are of this place, a life filled with smiles. She thinks of the kind people who have become her new family, a home surrounded by kindness, a love for her and her mother. She knows their loyalty is a wish for her family's happiness. But in the city, a new rumor spreads through the taverns. The people are terrified, but hopeful the knights will end the threat. And fate can only smile. His targets have taken the bait. He's ready to finally uncover the truth behind their corruption. That night, Hud Blelick gathers his forces at the south gate. His presence alone confirms the Blelicks are taking this seriously. With such a large party, they're certain of their victory. Guess they've never heard of a boss raid. A scout reports a trail of bodies, just as the rumors claimed. Hud confirms it. They're on the right path to find their monster. Rafal leaves Hud in charge with a simple, stern warning. But Hud is overconfident, certain he can handle this monster alone. His party follows the trail of bodies deeper into the forest. His men can only complain about the wasted goblin ears, priorities. But from the shadows, their target is already waiting for them. A scout finally spots the lone figure in the clearing. Hud calls out, recognizing the rumored monster. "Corpsey!" Fate sits calmly, his disguise working exactly as planned. A knight realizes this is the Goblin King's former territory. He wonders if this lich could have defeated the king. But Hud scoffs, dismissing the idea as completely impossible. Hud gives the order, telling his men to surround the target. From the trees, his party spreads out, forming a circle around Fate. Hud smirks, certain this small fry will be an easy path to fame. He tosses a distraction, ready to begin his glorious hunt. On his signal, the archers take aim, ready to pin their target down. But the arrows are deflected with ease, a flash of dark energy. Guess he's not as small a fry as they thought. The knights are stunned, realizing their foe isn't just lucky. They decide to close in, cutting off any chance of escape. The circle tightens, a ring of steel closing in on the lone figure. But beneath the mask, Fate steels himself, knowing he can't afford to fail. Hud roars his name, vowing to strike down the monster for all the trouble it's caused. His men notice Fate is trembling, mocking that the creature can't handle a holy knight's presence. One of the lackeys steps up, offering to deal with this pathetic foe himself. For the glory. Hud smirks, agreeing to let his underlings have their fun. The knight charges forward, but Fate's voice dares him to even try. In an instant, the man is sent flying, much to Hud's absolute shock. Fate appears before him, his hand crackling with a familiar, deadly energy. He moves in a blur, a whirlwind of steel against the remaining knights. He unleashes the 1-inch art, the very skill he stole from the Kobold Alpha. Another knight falls, completely overwhelmed by the Phantom's impossible power. The remaining knights can only scream as they're taken down. Hud panics as his men flee, trying to pull rank on a full-blown retreat. But Fate stands unfazed, a silent phantom in the chaos. Hud can only stare, his perfect plan completely shattered. His shock turns to pure rage, furious at being humiliated by a monster. But beneath the mask, Fate declares the warm-up is officially over. The voice is familiar, and a chilling realization dawns on Huddy. The mask comes off, and Hud's world comes crashing down. Fate calmly notes his surprise that Hud would walk right into his trap. The tables have turned. Fate is here for answers, not a fight. Hud's pride boils over, refusing to be questioned by a former servant. Fate offers a chilling ultimatum: talk and die quickly, or suffer. The Holy Knight roars his name, certain his status makes him untouchable. Guess humility isn't part of the training. But Fate is unimpressed, ready to test that so-called power. His thoughts turn to Roxy and the kind people he now protects. With his mind made up, he vows to make Hud pay for his crimes. The two stand alone in the clearing, the stage set for a final duel. His crimson eye glows, a sign that the hunt is far from over. With a flash of red light, he activates his appraisal skill. The stats are impressive, but Fate is far from intimidated. Hud taunts him, daring the former servant to make a move. But Fate is focused on his skill, the holy sword arts. He recalls a conversation about the legendary holy swords. They're forged from a rare metal, granting immense power. He asks Greed if this legendary weapon is a real threat. Greed scoffs, calling it a cheap imitation of true power. A bit of an ego on that talking sword. With that reassurance, Fate makes his move, charging forward. Hud roars in fury, ready to unleash his ultimate technique. He unleashes the fabled Grand Cross, a wave of purifying light. But Fate just watches, his crimson eye completely unfazed. But Fate simply calls him out for being far too slow. Hud can only stare in disbelief, his confidence completely shattered. Fate begins to list the reasons for his inevitable defeat, and the final nail in the coffin. Greed is simply the superior blade. The holy sword shatters, and Hud's entire world comes crashing down with it. Fate effortlessly catches the broken tip of the legendary weapon. He mockingly offers the piece back, a final brutal insult. Guess the warranty expired. Hud can only let out a roar of pure, impotent rage. The once proud knight is left defeated on the forest floor. But Fate isn't done, grabbing him by the collar for a little chat. Fate decides it's time to teach Hud a lesson of his own. The holy knight can only stare in absolute terror. He drags the once proud knight through the forest like a rag doll. Hud's pleas are ignored as he's slammed into a tree. The lesson continues with no sign of mercy from our boy. Fate mockingly compliments his new nature-inspired look. Guess that's one way to get in touch with the earth. The knight's pride is gone, replaced by desperate pleas for mercy. But his pleas only fuel Fate's rage, reminding him of Hud's victims. With a furious roar, he tosses the knight into the air. He calls on Greed, ready to unleash a non-lethal but very painful attack. He mockingly tells Hud that his special order is ready. He unleashes a devastating attack, a brutal taste of Hud's own medicine. The blow is precise, a brutal but non-fatal dismemberment. The once proud knight can only stare in shock, his body broken. Fate walks away, leaving the terrified knight to bleed on the forest floor. He figures only a holy knight's stats could survive such an attack. With the lesson taught, he asks if Hud is finally ready to talk. His first question is about Rafal, learning she's gone for 3 months. His next question is far more important. What do they have planned for Roxy? And the answer is a death sentence. She's being sent to Gallia. Fate's blood runs cold. They're sending her to the same place her father died. Hud explains the Sky Dragon's territory has expanded, a threat that can no longer be ignored. For the first time in 1,000 years, the beast must be contained, and Roxy was chosen as the sacrifice. Sounds like a great honor. Fate demands to know if the Blelix orchestrated this, and Hud's silence is all the answer he needs. The Broken Knight admits it was a conspiracy. The heart's righteousness made them a target. It all clicks for Fate. This was the secret meeting he witnessed in the alley. He can't believe she would agree, knowing they were sending her to her death. He imagines her standing alone against the legendary disaster, a hopeless final battle. But Hud reveals she had no choice. It was a unanimous vote from her so-called comrades, and all Fate can see is the daughter who mourns her father, now being sent to the very same fate. He knows she'd say something noble, willing to sacrifice herself to save just one person. And that selfless nature is exactly what her enemies are exploiting. Hud begs for his life, promising to change his ways. You know, standard villain groveling. But Fate's eyes show no mercy, only cold, hard judgment. With a final, brutal strike, he ends the Holy Knight's miserable life. His gluttony skill roars to life, ready to feast on a new soul. And with it, he steals the legendary Grand Cross technique. But Greed's voice cuts in, disgusted by their low-quality meal. The sword announces its second evolution is ready, and Fate agrees without hesitation. He'd rather feed the blade than keep the stats of a man like Hud. A vortex of dark energy surrounds him as his stats are consumed. And just like that, he's back to square one, his power completely drained. But Greed's new scythe form comes with a terrifying new power. He stands alone in the forest, his thoughts turning to Roxy's fate. Her name is a desperate whisper in the darkness of his mind. He's haunted by visions of her facing an impossible, monstrous foe. He jolts awake, screaming her name into the silent room. Back in his bed, the weight of the nightmare settles upon him. He tries to calm his racing heart, realizing it was just a dream. He can't even remember returning, his mind lost to the terrible truth. He tosses and turns, sleep offering no escape from the truth. He finally gives up, knowing rest is a luxury he can't afford. He gets up, facing his own reflection in the quiet room. At least for now, the crimson glow of starvation has faded, but he can't stop wondering why Roxy hid her fate from him. Greed's voice cuts in, calling him out for his hypocrisy. You know, just your average talking sword therapy session. The sword's brutal honesty earns it a sharp rebuke from our boy. He tries to rationalize her silence, hoping it was to protect him. But the doubt lingers as he lies back down, exhausted. He knows hunting goblins won't be enough to save her from a dragon. But Greed's voice cuts in, calling his panic a sign of weakness. He tries to rest, but his mind is a storm of worry and fear. The sword's taunts finally break him, and he screams in frustration. But Greed's lecture is cut short by a sudden commotion outside. A terrible realization dawns on him. He knows what this means. He scrambles from his bed, rushing to the door in a panic. The halls are filled with the worried faces of the other servants. He sprints towards the main hall, his worst fears taking hold. He finds Roxy surrounded by the staff, a silent, somber farewell. She turns to face him, her expression one of quiet, sad resolve. She greets him with a calm, almost serene smile. He demands to know what's happening, and she explains her new orders. A mission to Gallia. But fate knows the truth, screaming that this is no honor, it's a trap. He tries to reason with her, reminding her of what happened to her father. But she's already accepted her fate, vowing to finish what her father started. She thanks him for his concern, putting on a brave face for everyone. He asks how long she'll be gone, and her answer is a gut punch. 3 years. 3 years in a land where the sky dragon roams free. A death sentence. He remembers Hud's words. The situation is far worse than anyone knows, and all he can see is her facing that living disaster, a battle she cannot win. Fate can only stare, the terrible truth crashing down on him. But Roxy just offers a gentle, reassuring smile. Her final wish is for him to stay safe in her homeland. He clenches his fist, stunned she's still worried about him. But he can't find the words to make her stay. She calls his name, her own concern breaking through her smile. But his mind screams that he's a monster, a heretic. He grits his teeth, feeling completely unworthy to stop her. But she calls his name one last time, a soft farewell. She holds up a necklace, the gem he gave her now a treasured memento. She reminds him of their day together, the gem now a precious memory. She asks what he thinks, a final gentle question before she leaves. He can only manage a quiet compliment, saying it suits her well. His simple words bring a final, genuine smile to her face. With a promise to meet again, she turns to face her destiny. But all he can offer is a quiet, defeated farewell. He turns and runs, unable to watch her walk away from him. Back in his room, a new resolve takes hold as he prepares for a journey of his own. Greed's voice confirms it. His mind is finally made up. He's going to Gallia, not as a servant, but as a warrior by her side. He can't be by her side, but he can still be her shadow. He says his goodbyes to the staff, the first real family he's ever known. This journey is for them, so that one day, he and Roxy can return. With his gear packed, he walks the lonely road toward his new destiny. He passes through the city gates, leaving the capital far behind. He takes one final look back at the world he's leaving. The entire kingdom feels like a distant memory now. He reflects on his old life, a time that feels like a different person's story. He remembers the weak, powerless guard he used to be, and he wonders what that boy would think of the monster he is now. But now, everything has changed. He's no longer a servant, but a fighter. He remembers the painful past he's leaving behind, but he also holds on to the good, the memories he'll fight to return to. He walks the lonely road, a solitary figure on a new path. With a silent farewell, he leaves his old world behind. His mind drifts back to a quiet home under a starry sky. He remembers his father, a warrior, and the blood that always followed him home. A young Fate carefully tends to his father's wounds. The boy looks up, telling his father the bandage is done. His father praises his skill, but Fate knows it's only because he gets hurt so often. Guess take your kid to work day was a little different for them. His father offers a gentle smile and a quiet apology. He suggests they go pay a visit to Fate's mother. They walk hand in hand through a peaceful sunlit field. But their destination is a simple, lonely grave on a hill. The young boy prays for his mother to watch over his father. Beside him, his father is lost in his own silent grief. Fate tries to comfort him, saying his mother would understand. But his father smiles, explaining this is a prayer he wants to make. The memory fades as Fate jolts awake in the present. He realizes he was dreaming aloud in a carriage full of strangers. So much for a low profile. A fellow passenger teases him for his sleepy outburst. Fate can only look away, embarrassed by the attention. He looks out at the passing scenery, realizing how far he's come. The driver announces their arrival in the city of Tetra. The name echoes in his mind, a new stop on his long journey. He steps into the bustling streets of the port city. It's smaller than the capital, but still full of life. He pulls out his map, trying to chart his next move. He realizes Gallia is still a long, long way south, but finding a ride to the monster continent is proving difficult. Guess they don't have an Uber for that. He realizes finding a ship tonight is impossible. With time to spare, he decides to find a place to rest. His thoughts turn to the money he was given for the journey. He knows the headmaid gave him this, a silent blessing for his quest. He vows to make every coin count. He recalls passing through this city before, a starving child with no hope. But now, his hunger is a familiar call to action. He finds a tavern, a warm beacon in the unfamiliar streets. He slips inside, a lone traveler in a sea of cheerful patrons. The bartender offers a warm welcome, and Fate asks for the house special. The man suggests a meal that reminds him of the home he just left. A little taste of nostalgia for 20 copper. But the price gives him pause. His long journey demands careful spending. He tries to haggle, not wanting to be ripped off as a traveler. The bartender walks away, leaving Fate to observe the room. He takes in the lively atmosphere of the crowded tavern. It's a mix of well-armed warriors and wealthy merchants. He realizes the high prices are for a more affluent clientele. His meal finally arrives, a simple but welcome sight. With a grateful smile, he prepares to dig in. As he eats, he plans his journey south, a path for both information and power. But a sudden, angry shout shatters the tavern's peace. He looks over to see a man groveling before a group of thugs. Looks like trouble just found the menu. Fate's eyes widen, his quiet meal completely forgotten. The man begs, offering all he has for someone to save his village. But the warriors just laugh, mocking his meager payment. Their answer is a boot to the face, a brutal, humiliating rejection. The leader tells him to beg more sincerely if he wants their help. Pinned to the floor, the man can only offer muffled, desperate pleas. His suffering is just entertainment for these so-called heroes. The warrior finally relents, and a flicker of hope returns to the man's eyes. But the terms are impossible. A year's wait and 10 gold up front. With a final, cruel dismissal, the warrior tells him to look elsewhere. The villager can only look up, his face a mask of pure terror. But the warrior shows no mercy, telling him to know his place. She follows up with a brutal punch, silencing his pleas. She screams that no one in the tavern cares about his problems. But her next blow is stopped cold by a familiar, steady hand. The warrior roars in fury, but Fate calmly tells her it's over. He twists her arm back, her pained cry echoing in the tavern. Her arrogance shatters, replaced by desperate pleas for him to stop. Funny how that works. He tells her to sit down, as she's disturbing the other patrons. But as he walks away, she realizes she knows this mysterious stranger. Fate turns, his expression unreadable as he faces the man. The villager stammers, trying to get his attention. His eyes are wide with disbelief and a dawning recognition. With a cold smile, Fate greets the man. Set. After 5 long years. Set stumbles back, barely able to ask if it's truly him. Fate's gaze is steady, confirming the identity of the boy he once knew. A memory surfaces of a younger Set, hurling insults and stones. The boy's cruel words echo, calling him a useless parasite. Ah, childhood friendship. Young Fate could only shield himself, begging for the abuse to stop. The memory ends on a horrifying image. His home engulfed in flames. Set can only stare, his face a mask of pure shock. The man hits the floor, desperately begging Fate to save his village. He admits he has no right to ask, but pleads for help just this once. Fate agrees. It's a bold move to ask for help after everything he did. He remembers not just the insults, but the night Set burned his home to the ground. Set promises to do anything, his voice cracking with desperation. But Fate's expression remains cold, a silent, unreadable judgment. He knows anyone else would have walked away without a second thought. Guess he's just built different. Set explains his village is being terrorized by a horde of powerful monsters. Fate finally agrees, deciding he can visit his parents' graves while he's there. He agrees, but his true motive is far hungrier. Set's relief is short-lived as Fate insists they leave now. The villager panics, knowing the night is dangerous. But Fate sees the darkness as a perfect hunting ground. Set looks like he's regretting all his life choices. Greed's voice warns him not to get overconfident, but he knows from Set's desperation that the village is in real trouble. He tells the man to follow his lead through the darkness. With no other choice, Set puts all his faith in the warrior before him. The title makes Fate pause, a sign of how much he's changed. As they walk, Set can't help but wonder what happened to the boy he once knew. He reflects on happier times, a life before his curse. But their quiet walk is interrupted by a familiar forest pest. A lone goblin charges forward, eager for an easy meal. Fate moves in a flash, telling Set to stay out of his way. The fight is over before it even begins, leaving Set speechless. Set stammers his thanks, but Fate brushes it off as nothing. But Set knows this power is anything but normal. Funny how a little monster slaying changes your perspective. With the distraction handled, they continue their journey. But a strange sound in the night makes Fate stop in his tracks. Set's face drains of all color, his eyes wide with terror. Set finally works up the courage to ask a difficult question. He wonders if Fate still holds a grudge against the village that shunned him. Fate's silence is heavy, making the other man flinch in fear. He admits he does, but his parents' graves are reason enough to protect it. He's also a little curious to see how his old bullies have aged. You know, for closure. They finally arrive at the village, a silent, desolate place under the stars. Set suggests they see the village chief for a full briefing on the situation. He bows again, his desperation clear as he begs Fate to save them. Fate recalls the cruel child Set used to be, amazed by this sudden change of heart. And for the first time, he wonders if things could actually be different. Fate can only sigh, knowing this homecoming would be a disaster. They're met not with thanks, but with pitchforks and suspicion. A villager berates Set for bringing back the outcast he assumes is here for revenge. Set desperately pleads with them, insisting Fate is their only hope. But the villagers are lost in their own terror, unable to listen to reason. Amid the chaos, a familiar pain begins to throb in Fate's head. It's not the shouting, it's his cursed skill demanding its next meal. The village chief steps in, apologizing for his son's failure. Guess Dad of the Year isn't a title he's aiming for, but the people panic, knowing they won't survive another night. The chief offers a grim solution. Use Fate as a sacrifice to buy them time. Fate can only stare, the chief's cruel words sinking in. Greed's taunts are cut short as Fate decides to handle this his own way. Set begs him to reconsider, terrified of the consequences. But Fate agrees to let them try, a cold calm in his eyes. The chief puts his own son on lookout duty, a final stern warning. He makes it clear that if Set fails, he's on his own. Talk about fatherly support. With the villagers gone, Fate and Set are left alone at the gate. Fate calls him out on the betrayal, and Set can only apologize. He offers Fate a place to stay for the night, a desperate gesture. But he trails off, remembering he's the reason Fate is homeless. Fate agrees, figuring even his tormentor's home is better than nothing. With a nervous look, Set leads him through the village streets. But the door opens to a cheerful little girl, welcoming her father home. Set kneels down, embracing his daughter in a tender hug. The sight catches Fate completely off guard. His old bully is a father. He looks around the quiet house, asking where the girl's mother is. He notes her absence, a strange emptiness filling the small home. Set's expression darkens as he reveals she was killed by the monsters. The weight of his loss is clear, a man completely broken by grief. And Fate can only look on, the terrible truth of his desperation sinking in. He realizes Set's desperation wasn't for the village, but for his daughter. The little girl peeks out from behind her father's arm. She asks her father who this mysterious stranger is. Set introduces him as a hero, a super strong monster slayer. Guess former outcast I bullied didn't have the same ring to it. But her next question is heavy. Will he avenge her mother? As Set comforts his daughter, Fate can only watch in silence. He remembers how no one helped him when he was alone. At the dinner table, the girl's mood has completely changed. She asks to eat with her dad, admitting her grandparents scare her. Set promises he'll never leave her, and she cheers with pure joy. Fate can only watch the tender moment between father and daughter. Set finally admits that Fate has changed beyond recognition. He explains he was just a child, blindly following his father's lead. But having a family of his own finally forced him to grow up. Fate listens, a quiet understanding passing between them. But he knows one man's change doesn't redeem the entire village. He's offered a simple meal, a humble bowl of gruel. As he eats, a strange sense of familiarity washes over him. Guess even monster slayers get sentimental over porridge. The taste is nostalgic, a memory of his own father's cooking. He realizes he came back for more than just a grave visit. He asks for more details about the monster threat. Set describes a winged, horned beast, a lone terror in the night. Fate immediately identifies it as a gargoyle, a notoriously crafty monster. He explains their strategy. Lure you in with one, then attack with the whole flock. Set asks when the attack will come, a question that hangs heavy in the air. Fate realizes they attack on moonless nights, just like tonight. Talk about bad timing. Greed's voice chimes in, practically drooling over the coming feast. His sudden outburst leaves Set and his daughter completely terrified. He gives them a simple, stern order: stay inside no matter what. And with that, he steps out into the darkness, ready for the hunt. He watches from the rooftops as the village is torn apart. His appraisal skill reveals their stats and a very dangerous new trick. He knows an aerial bombardment would be the end of them all. With a steady hand, he draws back his bow, ready to even the odds. A single shot of light tears through the night, finding its mark. He switches to his scythe, ready to meet the rest of the horde head-on. Gluttony activates, and he barely registers the new fireball skill. But a sudden, horrifying sight snaps him back to reality. The village chief lies dead, leaving the people leaderless in the chaos. Guess that sacrifice plan didn't work out for him, and the monsters are far from finished with their fiery assault. The gargoyles unleash a storm of fire, turning the night sky red. Greed's voice cuts in, urging him to switch to the scythe. In a flash of blue light, the bow transforms into its deadly new form. He grips the massive scythe, his expression one of grim determination. With a confident smirk, he decides it's time for a little field test. He unleashes a massive wave of energy, a blue tide against a sea of fire. The attack is completely nullified, leaving him standing amidst the chaos. Greed boasts that it can cut through anything, and Fate agrees they have a chance. But the rest of the village isn't so lucky, still burning under the monster's assault. He grits his teeth, realizing he's stuck playing defense for Set's house. Guess being a hero means you're also on babysitting duty. The gargoyles swarm the rooftops, a sea of leathery wings. But Fate just smirks. Their numbers only make them a bigger target. He unleashes a wave of fire, a brutal counter to their own assault. He calls on Greed, ready to try a new, unpracticed technique. The sword's only concern is burning to death. Minor details. He leaps into the fray, a whirlwind of blue energy and cold steel. The scythe cuts through them with impossible, devastating ease. Fate is thrilled with the results, but Greed is a harsher critic. His gluttony skill roars to life, feasting on the fallen monsters. As one tries to flee, Greed warns of a new threat from above. A massive gargoyle descends from the sky, the clear leader of the flock. His appraisal skill confirms it, a named monster with impressive stats and a handy fire-resistant skill. The leader charges up a massive fireball, ready to incinerate him, but Fate is unimpressed, calling out its foolish close-range attack. The monster unleashes a devastating explosion of pure flame, but Fate stands completely untouched, his scythe nullifying the blast. He tells the beast it was begging for death by getting so close, as his gluttony skill activates. And just like that, the fire-resistant skill is now his. Guess that's one way to learn a new trick. He now has both fire magic and the perfect defense against it. But as he looks over the burning village, he realizes there are barely any survivors left. He sits alone on the rooftop, the battle finally over. But his victory feels hollow, a strange emptiness in his chest. A voice calls his name, pulling him from his dark thoughts. It's Set, who can only stare in shock at the devastation. Fate explains he was too busy protecting them to save the others. Set and his daughter can only look on in horror at their ruined home. Fate admits he hates this place, but still feels a strange pity. Guess you can't choose where you're from. He realizes that whatever this place was, it's gone forever now. With the village lost, he finally visits his parents' grave, a quiet final farewell under the starry night sky. He greets his parents, a quiet smile on his face. He apologizes for his long absence, promising to tend to their resting place. With gentle hands, he clears away the years of neglect. He sits before them, a son paying his respects at last. His thoughts drift back to a time long since past. He remembers his father's simple advice, to find happiness in a smile, a lesson learned from a man who always faced the world with warmth. Guess it runs in the family. He assures them he's managed to survive on his own, but now he has a new reason to fight, a journey he must take for another. He swears to the stars that he will bring Roxy home to the family that awaits her. He stands in silence, a final moment of peace with his family. With his goodbyes said, he turns to walk away from his past. But a vision of his parents offers one last blessing for his journey. The ghostly farewell snaps him back to the present, his resolve hardened. He leaves the two lonely graves behind, a chapter of his life now closed. With a final, quiet farewell, he sets off on his new path. But the next morning, the surviving villagers are looking for a scapegoat. Of course, they blame the one guy who actually helped. Set's daughter can only watch in terror as her father is accused. Their rage turns to Fate as he steps into the ruined square. They scream at him to leave, but he calmly states he was already on his way out. His hand rests on his hilt, a silent promise of what's to come. But their accusations are cut short by a new, terrifying shriek. They scatter in terror as a lone gargoyle dives from the sky. But Fate is completely unfazed, already aware of the straggler. His eyes narrow, a predator locking onto its final prey. In a flash of crimson light, the last monster is cut down. Guess they should have been thanking him instead of yelling. He turns to Set, explaining he had to deal with that first. Set can only stare, holding his daughter close as he calls Fate's name. He apologizes, knowing none of this was ever Fate's fault. His gaze drifts to the graves on the hill, a silent, final goodbye. Set asks if he visited his parents' graves, a quiet moment of understanding. He sends his daughter away, needing to face his past alone. With the child gone, the mood between the two men shifts. Set suddenly screams, begging Fate to hit him with all his might. Well, that's one way to ask for closure. Fate is completely baffled by the bizarre, desperate request. Set explains this is his way of taking responsibility for his past sins, but Fate still doesn't understand what this is supposed to solve. Set reveals his plan. He's leaving this ruined village behind for good. Fate can only listen, a silent witness to this final chapter. Set repeats his plea, wanting a physical punishment to mark his new resolve. Fate's expression is unreadable, weighing the strange request. Greed's voice urges him to use his full power, but Fate knows that would be a death sentence. With a sigh, he agrees, telling Set to brace himself for the impact. He winds up, a flicker of a smile on his face as he prepares to strike. The blow sends Set flying, slamming him hard against a nearby tree. Fate looks at his hand, realizing he may have misjudged his own strength. Whoops. He rushes over to check on the man, but is met with a strange, joyful laugh. Set hangs from a branch, laughing hysterically, his past finally behind him. The sight reminds Fate of his father, who always laughed in the face of adversity. Later, Set and his daughter thank him for the escort to a new town. Set suddenly remembers he still hasn't paid for the rescue. But Fate refuses the money, telling the man to keep it. He insists they'll need it to build a new life for his daughter. The simple act of kindness leaves Set completely stunned. With a final smile, Fate wishes them the best and takes his leave. They wave goodbye, the little girl calling him her big brother, a title he's more than earned. He walks away, a lone figure leaving his past behind for good. Elsewhere, a familiar white-haired warrior watches the stars. Her eyes snap open as she senses a presence on the wind. And far below, Fate continues his long journey south. He lets out a massive yawn, the long road taking its toll. He's managed to hitch a ride, offering his services as a bodyguard. He lies back in the wagon, trying to get some rest on the journey. But the driver calls him out for being so carefree on the road. The man is skeptical, admitting Fate doesn't look very strong. Fate confidently claims he's on par with a rookie holy knight. The driver immediately warns him to keep that thought to himself. He explains the next town is holy knight territory, and such talk is a death sentence. Guess they don't appreciate honest self-assessments. Fate agrees to keep quiet, his mind already on getting some sleep. He thinks a good fight with a holy knight would help him rest. Then again, maybe not. Greed's voice cuts in, reminding him he's worthy of wielding it. Their wagon continues its journey through a narrow, winding canyon. Suddenly, a volley of arrows rains down, shattering the peace. Fate snaps to attention, completely caught off guard by the attack. From the cliffs above, a group of bandits has them surrounded. He curses himself for being so distracted. He walked right into a trap. Greed calls him a worthless bodyguard, and Fate tells it to shut up. The driver panics, begging his holy knight to save them all. Guess that little boast is coming back to bite him. The bandits overhear, laughing at the idea and eyeing a potential payday. But the terrified driver clings to him, making any kind of fight impossible. With a sigh, Fate realizes he has no choice but to fight. His appraisal skill confirms they're weak, but he hopes to avoid any killing. The bandits charge forward, screaming for the kill, but just as Fate prepares to act, the battle is suddenly interrupted. A lone figure leaps from the cliffs, a flash of white against the sky. It's the Gallian warrior, her crimson eyes burning with battle lust. Her gaze is cold and fierce, a terrifying mirror of his own curse. She lands with the force of a meteor, shattering the ground and the bandits' confidence. Talk about stealing the show. Fate can only stare in shock, his own fight completely forgotten. He recognizes the mysterious warrior, the same one from the Heartlands. He wonders what the mysterious warrior is doing so far from home. She stands over her victim, a brutal end to a one-sided fight. She turns to Fate, calmly noting their unexpected reunion. He can only stammer in response, completely caught off guard. The driver thanks her for the save, eager to get out of there. But she has other plans, demanding a ride in exchange for their lives. The terrified driver quickly agrees, and Fate can only watch the bizarre negotiation. Guess please isn't in her vocabulary. But as they continue their journey, he can't help but be curious. He notices she didn't kill the bandits, just incapacitated them. He wonders about the true nature of this powerful, mysterious woman. The warrior steps onto the wagon, ready to join their party. But her weight sends the entire carriage tipping violently. Fate can only stare, wondering how she can possibly be so heavy. She offers a sheepish apology for the near disaster. She speaks to her axe, telling a weapon named Sloth to lighten up. The wagon slams back down, the balance suddenly restored. The driver is left completely bewildered by the sudden chaos. Fate realizes her axe must be able to change its own weight. Guess greed isn't the only high-maintenance weapon around. The two warriors sit in a quiet, awkward silence. She finally breaks the tension, demanding to know his name. Her crimson eyes are locked on him, a simple but intense demand. He stammers for a moment before finally introducing himself as Fate Graphite. She repeats his name, adding, of Gluttony, a title he didn't know he had. Fate is completely stunned, demanding to know how she knows about his cursed skill. She introduces herself as Mine, revealing she's also a keeper of a deadly sin skill. The revelation sends a jolt through him. He's not the only one. She calls him immature for not knowing, and reveals her own skill as Wrath. She asks if Greed ever told him, but Fate knows his sword isn't exactly a chatterbox. As the driver sweats bullets, Mine decides this isn't the place for a deep dive into cursed powers. She declares he now owes her and will be tagging along until the debt is paid. Guess he's got a new travel buddy. Fate questions the debt, wondering if she means their brief encounter back at the Heart Estate. He tries to refuse, explaining he has his own urgent business to attend to. But Mine's glowing eyes make it clear this isn't a negotiation. She's also headed to Gallia, and he's coming with her. Realizing he's outmatched, Fate quickly agrees, figuring it's better than ending up like the bandits. Mine seems pleased by his cooperation, looking forward to their journey together. With the matter settled, she immediately lies down for a nap in the wagon. Fate can only rationalize the situation, remembering Greed's words about first-class warriors. As they travel, he ponders the nature of her power, just as the driver announces their arrival. Guess nap time is over. The driver points ahead, excitedly revealing the Holy Night City on the horizon. In the distance, a massive, walled city stands as a testament to the Knight's power. Fate can only marvel at the sheer size of the city's walls. He can't shake the feeling that this place is completely cut off from the world. The driver explains the Holy Knight's rule with an iron fist, judging people by their skills. Sounds familiar. He points out the strange tattoos that mark every citizen. These brands classify them as nothing more than serfs. Fate shudders, grateful he wasn't born into such a rigid system. He asks if travelers are also subject to this, but the driver just laughs. Fate breathes a quiet sigh of relief. The driver assures him that warriors are treated like royalty here, but Fate knows he can't stay. His true journey lies far beyond these walls. The driver points him in the direction of the local inn. He's paid for his bodyguard services, his journey now funded. The man offers one last stern warning about the Holy Knights. With their business concluded, Fate tries to wake his new companion. But Mine is completely dead to the world, lost in a deep sleep. He tries to shake her awake, but she doesn't even stir. Greed warns him that waking her up could be a disaster. Guess she's not a morning person. The sword explains her raw power could easily level the entire city. With no other choice, Fate is forced to carry the sleeping warrior. He asks Greed about her, and the sword reveals a shared, ancient past. He resigns himself to his fate, stuck carrying the sleeping warrior. He asks what Greed meant, but the sword quickly denies any involvement. Fate can only sweat, knowing his partner is hiding something important. A new thought strikes him. Does her weapon talk too? He hears a faint snoring sound, realizing the axe is actually asleep. Guess that's a thing now. Greed calls the weapon lazy, and Fate finally learns its name. Sloth. He demands to know why Greed kept this a secret, but the sword just calls them annoying. He presses for more answers, and Greed finally agrees to talk. The sword reveals their true nature. They are the deadly sin weapons, far superior to any holy sword. He asks if there are others, but Greed's answer is as cryptic as ever. Greed's voice teases him, telling him to stop complaining and embrace his new role. Fate wonders if Sloth also evolves by absorbing stats just like his own weapon. He arrives at the inn, a massive building that looks more like a mansion. Inside, the lobby is a bustling hub of activity and commerce. He's amazed to see shops set up right inside the inn for travelers. The sheer scale of the place leaves him completely impressed. A kind-faced innkeeper offers him a warm and friendly welcome. He confirms he's booking a room for two, still carrying his sleeping companion. Guess he's her personal valet now. But his eyes lock onto the brand on her shoulder, the mark of a serf. She hands him the key, but her expression hints at some unspoken rule. She explains that for travelers, the city's options are extremely limited. With a final, ominous warning, she tells him to be careful outside. Fate realizes this city's social system is even more extreme than he thought. He can't help but wonder what kind of ruler enforces such strict laws. An older guide leads him through the massive, sprawling inn. She explains the building has 5 floors and a staggering 2,500 rooms. Talk about a 5-star labyrinth. Fate is stunned, realizing this place dwarfs even the capital's grandest inns. The guide offers to show him the way, noting they're used to armed guests. He offers a grateful thanks, admitting he'd be completely lost otherwise. She proudly calls the inn the city's pride, and Fate has to agree. The guide assumes he's from the capital, here to hunt the local monsters. Fate is completely unfamiliar with the term Sandmen. She explains they're a local monster that becomes a major threat this time of year. But for Fate, the news of monsters is a welcome relief for his growing hunger. The guide mistakes his cursed hunger for a simple appetite, pointing him to the restaurant. These Sandmen are desert creatures that turn any green land they touch into barren waste. The local warriors are locked in a constant battle to protect their homes from the encroaching desert. Fate realizes these creatures are more than just a simple nuisance. The guide confirms his fears. They're a threat to the city's very existence. She offers a simple weakness, a red core that serves as their heart. A straightforward hunt, at least. She adds that the cores can be sold, a welcome bonus for any warrior. But as she leaves, her gaze drifts to the sleeping mine. She offers a knowing smile, complimenting his cute travel companion. Fate can only panic, his flustered denial fooling absolutely no one. With the guide gone, his embarrassment fades into quiet resolve. He decides to go hunting alone while Mine gets her beauty sleep. But first, he'll leave a note so she knows where he's gone. Or maybe he'll just draw all over her face instead. Greed questions his sanity. The sword warns him he's on his own when she wakes up, but Fate isn't worried. With his masterpiece complete, he's ready to head out for the hunt. He sits alone in the quiet room, preparing for the hunt. He picks up his mask, knowing he can't afford to stand out. He dons his familiar disguise. Corpsey the warrior is back in business. This way, no one will connect him to the coming slaughter. He can only hope his secret identity holds up this time. With his mind made up, he prepares to head out. He slips out of his room and into the bustling inn. He spots a massive gathering of warriors, all here for the Sandmen. Looks like the competition is stiff. He decides to find a quieter exit to avoid any unwanted attention. But a familiar rumble in his stomach reminds him of his true purpose here. He catches his reflection, the crimson glow already taking over one eye. Greed's voice chides him for giving in to the curse so easily. The sword suggests a dangerous new training regimen. He'll have to fight on the very edge of his curse to master it. He knows he can't let this power control his future forever. Greed warns that if he fails, he'll be completely consumed by his own skill. Fate accepts the grim reality of his cursed existence. With his mind made up, it's time for practice. And dinner. A 2-for-1 special. He spots the other warriors, deciding to let them lead the way. They'll be the perfect bait to draw out his prey. He watches the warriors move through the darkness with ease. Greed explains they're likely using magic tools for sight. Night vision goggles are a common tool for monster hunters, a necessary expense for anyone who wants to survive the night. Greed explains the tech originated in Gallia, now a lost art. These tools are rare and expensive relics of a bygone era, but Fate knows he's different. He can just steal the skills he needs. A perk of having a cursed appetite, I guess. Suddenly, one of the warriors ahead stops dead in his tracks. The entire party freezes, sensing a strange presence in the air. Fate wonders if he should invest in some gear, but Greed scoffs at the idea. The sword reminds him that his gluttony skill is all he'll ever need. Greed calls the magic tools garbage, declaring itself the only weapon he needs. Someone's got a bit of an ego. Fate has to agree. With his mask and his cursed sword, he's more than equipped for this hunt. Greed's voice snaps him back to reality, telling him to focus. He looks out over a vast, sandy wasteland, a stark change of scenery. Greed explains this is the Sandmen's work, constantly expanding their territory. The sword predicts this entire land will be desert in 1,000 years. The thought is a sobering one, a reminder of the stakes. But his thoughts are cut short as the warriors below signal the attack. A horde of sand creatures erupts from the ground, a terrifying sight. But for Fate, the sight only awakens his cursed, insatiable hunger. He decides to watch for now, a chance to learn their tactics. And while he's at it, he'll get a closer look with his appraisal skill. His appraisal confirms it. The Sandmen are slow, but their stats are decent. Below, one of the warriors unleashes a powerful fire spell. The creatures are engulfed in flames, revealing a critical weakness. He realizes their strategy. Magic is far more effective than trying to find the core, but Fate is completely unimpressed by their safe, reliable tactics. Guess he prefers a little more chaos. He remembers his own flashy attack back at the Heart Estate, and the mess it created. Besides, his goal tonight is to train in half-starvation mode, not end the fight instantly. Greed's voice chimes in, telling him it's finally time to get started. With a silent agreement, Fate leaps from the cliffs, ready to join the fray. He lands in the heart of the canyon, a silent shadow ready for the hunt. He lands with a thud, his crimson eye glowing with hunger. He spots a lone Sandman, the perfect test subject for his new skill. He calls on the power he stole from the gargoyles, ready to unleash a fiery attack. A massive fireball erupts from his hand, a torrent of pure flame. Or at least that's what he was going for. The result is a little less impressive. The monster can only laugh at his pathetic attempt at magic. Fate admits he's never used magic before, and Greed tells him to switch back to the bow. Greed asks if he's just going back to his old tricks, but Fate has a new plan. He suggests combining his magic with his archery for a new kind of attack. He draws back the string, wondering if this crazy plan could actually work. He focuses his will, commanding the flames to obey his command. A new technique is born, combining his archery with raw, stolen magic. He lets the flaming arrow fly, a streak of fiery vengeance in the night. The shot finds its mark, engulfing the Sandman in a massive explosion. The monster is torn apart, a testament to his devastating new power. Fate smiles at his success, while Greed demands its well-deserved praise. Of course, the sword takes all the credit. He now has a plan. Push his cursed hunger to the absolute limit. He's not sure if this dangerous training will work, but he has to trust his partner. After a long night of hunting, he collapses, completely drained. He realizes fighting on the edge of his curse is a mental battle, not just a physical one. He struggles to his feet, his body screaming in protest. The mental and physical exhaustion is almost too much to bear. Greed calls an end to the training, praising his first attempt. But Fate isn't done, unleashing one final desperate attack. The fiery blast incinerates the last of the Sandman grunts. But his hunger is far from satisfied. He can sense more prey nearby. He realizes his rampage has drawn the attention of the entire horde. Two massive Sandmen emerge, their red eyes burning with rage. The smell of his fiery attack only awakens a deeper, more primal hunger. Greed confirms his suspicion. The Alpha has arrived, and it's time for the main course. Greed offers some final words of encouragement, telling him not to choke. Fate charges forward, a blur of motion against the sandy canyon floor. But a sudden commotion ahead makes him stop in his tracks. He sees the warriors from earlier, now facing the full wrath of the Alpha. The so-called heroes are completely paralyzed by fear. Guess their magic tools didn't come with a bravery setting. The monster raises its fist, ready to crush them all in a single blow. The leader screams for his men to hold the line, a desperate, futile command. The blow connects with devastating, earth-shattering force. The shield shatters like glass, sending the warrior flying back. But just as the monster moves in for the kill, a golden arrow finds its mark. The mage tries to draw the Alpha's attention, a desperate gambit. But the party is already battered and bleeding, on the verge of collapse. The warrior urges his friend on, and the mage vows to keep fighting. Fate watches, impressed by their teamwork and loyalty. A real party. Greed teases him about being jealous, but Fate is ready to move. He's not here to save them, he's just here for the main course. His crimson eye glows as he sizes up his new prey. The appraisal reveals a level 60 boss with some seriously high stats. The warriors can only stare as a new player enters the field. Fate knows they'll just get in his way, a minor annoyance. He admits he's not great at protecting others, but he has a plan. A cage of light erupts, trapping the other warriors in place. Guess that's one way to keep them safe. The party leader can only stare, demanding to know who he is. He asks if this mysterious masked figure is here to help them. Fate's answer is a simple cold no. He makes it clear he's only here for the Alpha monster. The warriors are stunned, offering to fight alongside him. But Fate tells them to get out of his way before they get hurt. He knows it's harsh, but he's surprised they failed with such numbers. With the distractions handled, his focus returns to his true prey. The Alpha unleashes a devastating blow, shaking the canyon floor. Fate grits his teeth, the shockwave rattling him to the core. The trapped warriors can only watch in terror as the monster looms. The leader makes a choice, deciding to trust this mysterious warrior. He offers a final warning, and Fate promises he won't die here. Fate is surprised by their concern. A rare moment of camaraderie. He readies his bow, needing to end this before Mine wakes up. Guess he's worried about more than just the monster. Greed offers some helpful advice. Just hit the glowing red part. Fate snaps back, already well aware of the monster's weak point. His mind flashes back to the Kobold Alpha, a fight he barely won. He knows he can't rely on the bow's ultimate attack forever. He dodges with ease, realizing this new alpha is incredibly slow. So he switches tactics, deciding to carve the beast up piece by piece. He'll just keep slicing until he finds the monster's hidden core. Greed calls his plan simple-minded and Fate tells it to shut up. You know, a healthy partnership. The sword admits it's good practice but warns him not to get cocky. Fate just smiles, ready for the challenge ahead. With a confident roar, he charges in to meet the alpha head-on. His blade cuts deep, a flash of blue energy against the sandy hide. The monster stumbles back, but the fight is far from over. He lands a powerful blow, sending sand flying everywhere. But the monster just reforms, his attacks passing right through. Fate realizes this is far too easy. It feels like a trap. Greed's voice screams a warning, telling him to watch out. A massive fist of sand erupts from the ground below him. He dodges just in time, the surprise attack nearly catching him, but he's caught in a vortex, pulled toward the monster's core. The alpha reforms on the cliffside, having lured him into its trap. So much for his brilliant carving strategy. It unleashes a barrage from above, forcing him on the defensive. Greed's voice reminds him this is why you don't get cocky, but Fate just smirks, seeing this impossible fight as the perfect training. He'll just dodge its attacks while searching for the hidden core. Greed challenges him to prove his skill, and Fate switches to his bow. But the alpha is surprisingly agile, dodging his golden arrow with ease. So he switches tactics mid-air, his scythe tearing into its shoulder. He lands gracefully, a blur of motion against the sandy floor. Greed urges him to press the attack, and Fate is already on the move. Guess his talking sword is also his personal hype man. He weaves through its clumsy attacks, a dance of deadly precision. But the monster has another trick up its sleeve, its hand glowing with power. Fate is suddenly trapped in a vortex, a powerful sandstorm spell. He realizes the monster is trying to wear him down with its attacks. But Greed spots an opening, and Fate is ready to take it. The monster's body shatters, seemingly defeated by his assault. With a confident smirk, he declares that he's finally got it. His attack reveals the monster's glowing red core, its only weak point. But the core suddenly shoots away, a desperate last-ditch escape. Guess this hunt just turned into a high-speed chase. He knows he can't let it get away after all this effort. If it escapes now, it could attack any traveler who passes through this desert. He won't let that happen, calling on Greed for their ultimate attack. But Greed warns him it'll cost 20% of his stats to land the shot. Fate's eyes burn with resolve. He agrees to the deal without hesitation. Greed notes his willingness to sacrifice anything for victory. He draws back the bow, pouring his power into the final shot. With a furious roar, he unleashes the devastating attack. A single arrow of light streaks across the night sky. The shot connects, engulfing the core in a massive explosion. The monster's heart shatters, its final defense completely broken. Fate lands gracefully, his hunt finally at an end. He looks over the massive burning crater he just created. Guess he's getting good at redecorating the landscape. But his victory is short-lived as his gluttony skill roars to life. The familiar agony hits him as his cursed skill takes its due. But this time, the recovery is faster, a sign of his growing control. He credits his brutal training, but Greed just points out he's drooling. He's confident he can manage his hunger, but a voice cuts through his thoughts. The other warriors have finally been freed from his light cage. The party leader demands to know what happened to the alpha monster. Fate can only point to the massive crater he left in the canyon floor. The warriors can only stare in horror at the sheer devastation. They find the shattered remains of the core, and Fate realizes his cover is blown. He wanted a quiet hunt, but ended up putting on a fireworks display. So much for a low profile. The party leader can only laugh, amazed by the masked warrior's power. He turns to his comrades, who can only agree in stunned silence. They admit his appearance is strange, but his skills are undeniable. Fate is relieved, realizing there are other true warriors besides Roxy. The leader introduces himself as Baldo, offering his sincere thanks. Fate gives his alias Mukuro and asks about the injured. Baldo confirms they were evacuated and will recover from their wounds. Fate takes in the news, his expression hidden behind the mask. But a new problem arises: how to carry the massive monster core. Fate realizes its size and smooth surface will make it impossible to move. Guess he should have thought of that before blowing it up. He tries to find a handhold, hoping a crack will be enough. But even with his immense strength, the core refuses to budge. Instead, his own feet sink deep into the desert sand. He panics, realizing he's about to be swallowed by the ground. Well, this is an embarrassing way to go. But Baldo and his men rush in, offering their combined strength. The warrior leader offers to help as thanks for saving their lives. He rallies his men, who agree to help for free. Fate can only offer a quiet, grateful thanks for their help. Together, they manage to haul the massive prize back before dawn. He realizes that without them, he'd still be stuck in the desert. Back at the inn, the entire staff is waiting to greet their returning hero. The innkeeper is overjoyed, promising to handle the Corps' transport personally. They're met with a thunderous applause, a hero's welcome from the entire inn. Fate asks about the commotion, and the innkeeper is surprised he doesn't know. He explains this was the boss monster that plagued the region for generations. Fate realizes his quiet hunt has made him the center of unwanted attention. But he sees this as a chance to build his new identity as the warrior Makuro. The innkeeper admits they have no set reward as no one else has ever succeeded. Guess they weren't expecting a winner. He promises a prize by morning and urges Fate to get some well-deserved rest. But as he turns to leave, a familiar voice calls out his new name. Baldo and his men invite him for a celebratory drink, eager to hear his story. But Fate remains silent, his expression hidden by the mask. He politely declines, needing to get some rest after the long night. With his business done, he slips away from the adoring crowd. But as he walks, he feels an unpleasant stare on his back. He knows he'll have to be more careful to keep his identity a secret. Guess being a local hero has its downsides. He quietly enters his room, finding Mind still fast asleep. Completely drained from the hunt, he collapses onto his own bed. Later, he's woken by the faint sound of running water. He sits up, realizing his traveling companion is nowhere in sight. Mind's voice greets him as she towels off her hair. She's fresh from her shower and furious about his little prank. Fate panics at her state of undress, but she's completely unfazed. He tries to defend his honor, but she's already moved on. She explains the doodle was a pain to wash off as she pins him to the bed. Normally this would earn him a trip out the window, but she needs him alive. So instead, she's decided on a more creative form of payback. Guess revenge is a dish best served with a mirror. He looks in horror at his new, very distinguished look. She teases him, saying the new style really suits him. Fate can only stammer, his pride completely shattered. Her crimson eyes narrow, a silent promise of payback. He realizes her wrath skill means she repays every slight tenfold. He desperately tries to wash off his new, very permanent look. But her handiwork is surprisingly stubborn, refusing to wash away. He wonders if his mask will be enough to hide his humiliation. Deciding to clean up, he gets ready to wash his sandy clothes. But a fancy bottle of liquid soap catches his attention. He's stunned by the luxury. Even the hearts only had bar soap. He realizes this must be the same scent Mine was using earlier. But a closer look reveals a horrifying price tag. 1 gold coin. Guess luxury comes at a steep price. Fate is completely floored by the astronomical price tag. He realizes he'll probably be footing the bill for Mine's share too. But with his reward money, he decides to treat himself for once. He dreams of a life of simple luxury he's never known. But Mine's voice snaps him back to reality, telling him to hurry up. Terrified of her wrath, he frantically finishes his shower. He has to admit, the expensive soap is worth every silver coin. He steps out to find her waiting, unimpressed by his tardiness. He offers her the bottle of soap as a desperate peace offering. Guess a gift basket was out of the question. She accepts his apology, and he can only kneel in gratitude. With his mask back on, Fate is ready to continue their journey. Greed's voice chimes in, teasing that Mine thinks he looks more manly now. She cuts off the banter, calling him Skull as she heads for the door. Guess the nickname is sticking. They check out of the inn, receiving a warm farewell from the keeper. But before they leave the city, Fate has one last stop to make. He explains he needs to collect the reward for the sand golem he defeated. The news leaves Mine completely stunned. She admits she was planning to hunt it herself, but he beat her to it. Talk about stealing someone's thunder. As he heads for the exchange office, she decides to tag along. But his intimidating mask earns them a less than welcoming reception. The clerk greets him by his alias Mukuro, ready to do business. He presents the reward, a staggering 100 gold coins. The amount completely shatters Fate's understanding of money. The clerk mistakes his shock for disappointment, but Fate quickly accepts. Mine tells him to get a grip and just bag the money already. He can feel her intense gaze, a silent, unreadable judgment. She finally asks if he was after the bounty for the crowned monster. She reveals her own goal is to hunt them to support her poor village. The revelation gives him a new perspective on the fierce warrior. So he offers her half, and she accepts without a moment's hesitation. Guess that's one way to pay off a debt. He figures 50 gold coins is more than enough for his own journey. The simple act of kindness brings a rare, gentle smile to her face. Fate realizes he's found the key to her good side. Cold, hard cash. But as they leave, their path is blocked by an unwelcome welcoming party. The leader, a man in Holy Knight armor, asks if he's the one who took down the golem. Fate confirms the man's suspicion, his eyes glowing with a quiet intensity. The man introduces himself as Rudolph, and an appraisal reveals stats well over 1 million. Rudolph gets his alias wrong, but Fate is quick to correct the arrogant knight. The knight makes him a job offer he can't refuse, declaring Fate is now his subordinate, and his smug expression makes it clear that no is not an option. Rudolph declares that as a holy knight, his word is absolute law. He reaches out, ready to brand Fate as his personal property. Fate's hand tightens, a silent sign that his patience is wearing thin. But Mind steps in, calmly explaining that Fate is already spoken for. The knight scoffs, completely dismissing the girl's intervention. Her eyes narrow with cold fury as Fate tells the knight to go home. And with a brutal swing of her axe, Mind sends the knight flying. The blow is so powerful it launches him clear across the city square. He slams into a distant wall with a bone-shattering impact. A single star twinkles where the Holy Knight used to be. Well, that's one way to handle a job offer. Mind casually declares she sent the Holy Knight home, and Fate agrees he's probably not dead. He makes a mental note for future survival. Never treat Mind like a child. A few days later, their journey continues, but his thoughts drift back to the city. He regrets not saying goodbye to Baldo, but hopes to share a drink with him one day. He asks the driver for an ETA, learning the next city is still 3 days away. The high price for the ride makes sense as the monsters get stronger closer to Gallia, but as they travel, a far more immediate problem dawns on him. Their food supply has dwindled to almost nothing. He remembers buying a massive amount, enough to last them for weeks, and then it hits him. His new partner's appetite might be a deadly sin all on its own. He realizes their food is almost gone, but the driver points them to a nearby village. The driver explains it's a small detour, and Fate is thrilled by the news. He eagerly turns to share the good news with his traveling companion, but she's one step ahead, holding up the last empty piece of jerky. She asks if they're going to buy more, and Fate can only sigh in defeat. But as he sulks, she suddenly shoves a piece of jerky into his mouth. She notes that he's always distracted, but surprisingly sharp when it counts, and just like that, she lies down, using his lap as a pillow. Guess personal space isn't her thing. He asks about the space in the back, but she's busy rating his lap's comfort level. She tells her new bed to be quiet and wake her when they arrive. Fate quietly asks Greed a question while Mind sleeps. He wonders what drives her, what battles she's fighting alone. Greed plays coy, but Fate knows the sword is hiding something. The sword offers another vague warning about getting too involved. But Greed quickly changes the subject, offering a chance for revenge. The sword suggests a prank that would almost certainly get him killed. The driver calls him out for talking to himself, and Fate quickly shuts Greed down. Their journey continues, the quiet road a welcome change of pace. He remembers the driver's words, but what he sees is beyond prosperous. It's a peaceful, thriving village, a perfect picture of rural life. The villagers are happy and healthy, a picture of simple prosperity. The smell of fresh bread fills the air, a welcome change for Fate. The driver explains the village's secret is a central spring. Fate is genuinely impressed by their simple, thriving life. The driver tells a story of a lone traveler who found this place. He settled down, and a community grew around the life-giving water. And from that simple spring, the entire village was born. Fate realizes this place is a true oasis in a barren land. Sounds a little too good to be true, doesn't it? But the driver's tone suddenly turns serious, a hint of caution. He gives a cryptic warning. Don't stay here for too long. He explains the rumor. Stay too long and you lose the will to leave. With his job done, the driver says his goodbyes, and Fate is once again stuck carrying his sleeping companion. He remembers she asked to be woken up soon, so he decides on a very brave, very stupid method. He holds on, a silent test of her legendary wrath. She finally wakes up, stretching with a massive yawn. He tells her they've arrived and are heading out for supplies, and she thanks him with a painful promise of future violence. With his cheek still stinging, they head for the village shops. He's impressed by the market. The selection is incredible for a small village. The children are happy, the produce is fresh. It's a picture of perfect peace. But a strange feeling of unease begins to creep into Fate's mind. He looks closer at the crowd and a chilling realization dawns on him. Far too many of the villagers share the exact same face. Guess the gene pool here is more of a puddle. A friendly shopkeeper greets them, oblivious to his growing suspicion. He plays it cool, but her casual explanation only deepens the mystery. She explains that their crops and livestock grow at an impossible rate. For the people here, this unnatural abundance is just a normal part of life. Pushing his concerns aside, Fate confirms they're here to buy supplies. The shopkeeper suggests their salted meat, a local specialty for travelers. It's the only food that doesn't spoil outside the village limits. Totally not a red flag. Fate is understandably hesitant about eating magically preserved mystery meat. But the woman insists it's perfectly safe, a staple of their daily diet. She even claims it's a fertility booster, explaining the village's unique family resemblances. Fate can only offer a weak agreement, the unsettling pieces finally clicking into place. Mind's eyes narrow, her own suspicions now fully confirmed. She calls the village strange, and Fate agrees he knows the cause. He looks to her for confirmation, his theory taking shape. Their eyes turn to the glowing spring, the source of this unnatural prosperity. Mind decides they've seen enough, suggesting they return after dark. They wait until nightfall, but the spring still looks deceptively peaceful. Fate leans in closer, finding no sign of the monster he suspects. He reaches for the water, ready to test his theory, but Mind's hand stops him cold, a stern warning in her eyes. She confirms their worst fears. This is a legendary city eater. The name sends a chill down Fate's spine. Mind explains it's a patient predator that feeds only once every few centuries. Talk about a long-term investment plan. It cultivates its food source, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the horrifying truth finally dawns on Fate. Mind explains that the water supercharges all life it touches. But this particular monster has a very specific, very human diet. The entire village is just a farm, a future meal for the beast. And that fertility boost was just another part of its long-term meal prep. Fate grits his teeth, realizing they have to do something. But Mind points out the obvious flaw in that heroic plan. Trying to evacuate them would be impossible. They'd never believe the truth. And even if they did manage to defeat the monster, this entire oasis would turn back into a barren wasteland. Mind asks a heavy question. Can he give these people a new home? Fate clenches his fist, admitting he can't make that choice for them. He looks at the spring, realizing this is one monster they can't afford to defeat. The next day, the villagers are as cheerful and oblivious as ever. The shopkeeper spots them, surprised they're leaving so soon. Fate forces a smile, explaining they're in a hurry to leave. The woman accepts his excuse, a hint of sadness in her eyes. She asks them to visit again, a warm but chilling invitation. Her words about the village's future prosperity hit him like a physical blow, but he puts on a brave face, promising they'll be back one day. Back on the road, he can only wonder what Roxy would have done in his place. Mine explains that some battles can't be won with strength alone. Besides, the monster won't be ready to feast for another century. She offers a sliver of hope. They can return if they find another way. Fate agrees, his resolve hardened by the impossible choice. They leave the village behind, a silent promise hanging in the air, but their journey is interrupted by a new, more skeletal threat. The arrows fly, but the bony archers aren't exactly marksmen. Guess they left their brains behind. Fate notes the monsters are getting stronger closer to Gallia. The driver panics as the fallen skeletons begin to rise again. Fate realizes they're unkillable by normal means and tells the driver to floor it. The wagon barrels forward, a volley of arrows just missing. But their escape is cut short. A wheel has completely shattered. Fate scans the area, relieved to find no immediate threats. Besides being completely stranded. The driver estimates a 3-day repair, if they can get parts from the village. He relays the bad news to Mine, apologizing for the delay. But she steps out, confident her strength can solve the problem. Guess brute force is her go-to for wagon repair. She heads off to scout the village, always moving at her own pace. Fate decides to follow, putting on a brave face for the driver. He's surprised to find the village so peaceful, despite the monsters. He figures there must be a powerful protector keeping them safe. Fate decides they should find the village chief for permission to stay. But a voice calls out, its owner already waiting for them. The man sensed Fate's power, but can tell he means no harm. He introduces himself as Aaron Barbados, the village chief. Fate gives his own name, a simple traveler in a strange land. He explains their situation, and Aaron graciously offers them a place to stay. But there's a catch, and it comes in the form of a legendary blade. Fate's eyes widen in shock. This man is a holy knight. Aaron's friendly demeanor shifts, challenging Fate to a sparring match. Guess welcome means something different around here. Fate tries to play it off, but Aaron sees right through his humble facade. Aaron reveals he has the appraisal skill and has seen Fate's incredible stats. Fate is stunned. His own concealment skill should have hidden his power. The old knight's curiosity is piqued, offering a friendly, non-lethal duel. With no other choice, Fate reluctantly agrees to the fight. Aaron sizes him up, correctly guessing his swordsmanship is self-taught. The Holy Knight moves in a flash, his blade glowing with immense power. Fate is sent flying, admitting he never had a proper teacher. Guess a talking sword doesn't count as a sensei. But he recovers with a furious counter, refusing to be underestimated. His attack is stopped cold, the holy sword a blur before his eyes. In an instant, the spar is over, with Aaron's blade at his throat. Fate grits his teeth, feeling like he's being treated like a child. His appraisal reveals stats in the millions, and a concealment skill. This man is on a whole other level, an upper-tier holy knight. He realizes Aaron's own appraisal skill saw right through his disguise. The old knight explains he's been relying on raw power to win his fights. He points out that Fate has never had a proper teacher for technique. Guess a talking sword doesn't count as a sensei. The old knight's gaze is steady, a silent assessment of the boy's potential. Fate can only look on, completely confused by this sudden lecture. And then Aaron makes an offer he never expected, to train him. Fate is completely stunned, asking why he would help a stranger. Aaron explains his time is running out, and he wants to pass his skills to a worthy successor. Fate is suspicious, but knows this is an opportunity he can't afford to miss. With a quiet resolve, he agrees to the old knight's terms. He asks for training during their 3-day stay, but Aaron seems to think that's not enough time. But with no time to waste, the Holy Knight declares their training begins now. A short while later, Fate is left completely exhausted on the ground. Guess sparring has a different meaning for Holy Knights. He struggles to his feet, asking why they're training without weapons. Aaron explains it's the best way to learn stat control and avoid serious injury. Fate can only think about how beaten up he already is. He knows his auto-recovery is the only thing keeping him conscious as Aaron leads him away. But their training is interrupted by a familiar, imposing figure. Fate introduces Mine, his companion, with a stark warning about her temper. The old knight just laughs, sympathizing with the boy's difficult situation. But Fate panics, realizing his warning came far too late. Unfazed, Aaron simply smiles and invites them to his home. They arrive at a simple cottage, surprised by the humble dwelling. He apologizes for the lack of luxury in his home. Aaron hopes she'll be satisfied, but Mine looks thoroughly unimpressed. Guess she's a tough critic. The knight points out her bad mood, but Fate just sighs, saying it's her default setting. Inside, the house is just as simple, with very little furniture. Aaron explains this humble home was a gift from the villagers. He admits he came here just to slay monsters, a way to vent his frustrations. But people with nowhere else to go began to gather around him, and a village was born. He couldn't just abandon them, and soon found himself their leader. He spent his entire life protecting this place, but his time is running out. The villagers have sworn to stay by his side, a loyalty that's a little intense. He knows that without his protection, they'll be devoured by monsters. A sudden realization dawns on Fate. He's being groomed as a replacement. But the old knight just laughs, insisting he'd never force such a burden on him. He admits this is all just a selfish wish from a dying man. He simply wants to leave behind proof that he lived. The next day, their training is brutal, while Mine naps under a tree. Fate can only grunt in pain, completely overwhelmed by the old knight. He sarcastically asks to slow down, worried about his teacher's back. The old knight is surprised, then impressed by the boy's spirit. He declares that if Fate can still talk, he's not trying hard enough. Fate manages to block the next blow, earning a rare compliment. But the old knight's gaze is still intense. A teacher pushing his student. He points out a critical weakness, sweeping Fate's legs from under him. The knight's movements shift, a flurry of blows that leaves Fate stunned. Meanwhile, Mine continues her intense training in the art of napping. Aaron compliments Fate's form, glad his body can take the punishment. He calls for a break, offering to teach Fate a new trick. Fate agrees, ready to learn from the seasoned warrior. But his appraisal skill is met with a blinding flash of light. Aaron explains he released his mana to counter the appraisal. It's a trick to make an opponent flinch, a defensive measure. But the old knight's lesson is cut short by a sudden observation. He points out Fate's eyes, and our boy realizes his curse is showing. Guess half-starvation isn't great for keeping a low profile. He quickly covers it, blaming Mine's supposed excitement for the change. He panics, realizing his excuse means Mine will be excited for days. But he shakes it off, ready for another round of brutal training. Aaron is more than happy to oblige, his expression hardening. But this time something is different. Fate can see his movements. He manages to block the next blow, a small but crucial victory. Aaron is impressed by his rapid growth, and Fate credits his teacher. But his success is short-lived as he's sent flying once again. The old knight switches tactics, telling him to stay calm. Guess lesson 2 is about to begin. Fate struggles to his feet, refusing to give up on this lesson. Aaron's words echo in his mind. Footwork is the key to victory. Fate pushes back, his crimson eye burning with determination. He sees an opening, a chance to finally land a solid blow. But the old knight is faster, countering with a devastating punch. Eren smiles, genuinely impressed by his student's rapid progress. He promises that tomorrow the real swordsmanship lessons will begin. Later, over dinner, Fate asks about his teacher's final wish. His eyes fall on a family portrait, a relic from a happier time. Eren's smile fades, admitting they're the family he failed to protect. The revelation hits Fate hard, a familiar story of loss and regret. While he was away in Gallia, monsters took everything from him. Fate apologizes for the painful subject, but Eren dismisses it. He was once called the Sword Saint, a title he feels he never deserved. Now, he spends his days repenting before the memory of his lost family. Fate realizes this training is about more than just fighting. He wonders if the old knight sees him as a surrogate son. The next day, the real swordsmanship lessons finally begin. Eren offers a rare compliment, telling him to master the basics. Fate eagerly agrees, ready to learn from his new master. Eren teases that he's only just graduated from a goblin skill level. Well, that's one way to motivate a student. But he's confident that with this foundation, Fate is ready for the next step. Fate's eyes burn with a new, quiet determination. Eren's next lesson is simple. Parry his holy sword with a stick. No pressure. Fate thinks it's impossible, but Eren insists he just needs to trust the training. The old knight sees something in him, a potential he's ready to unlock. With a deep breath, Fate accepts the insane challenge. The holy knight charges, his blade a blur of deadly focused energy. Fate's eyes lock on, his entire world narrowing to this single moment. And with a flash of light, the impossible happens. The stick holds firm. Eren is impressed, and a sudden realization dawns on Fate. He understands now. It's not about strength, but perfect minimal control. Eren explains this sword style is a family heirloom, a legacy he now passes to Fate. The weight of that statement hits Fate. This was meant for Eren's lost son. With their 3 days of training over, Eren offers some final fatherly advice. Fate can only offer his sincere, heartfelt thanks for the lessons. That night, they share one final meal in the quiet cottage. Fate reflects on the simple happiness he's found in these humble meals. But he notices Mine eats with a strange, detached emptiness. She reveals a shocking truth. She can't taste anything at all. Well, that explains her love for bland jerky. She dismisses his concern, explaining it was a choice she made long ago. Eren changes the subject, turning his attention to the silent warrior. He turns to Mine, admitting he can't even compare to her level of power. She agrees, adding that 1,000 years of training might get him close. The old knight laughs it off, and Mine calls it the limit of being human. Fate is stunned, realizing she just implied she isn't human at all. And Eren confirms it. He saw her 50 years ago, looking exactly the same. He remembers her fighting a horde of monsters, completely unchanged by time. The old knight demands to know what she truly is. She reveals she's an immortal spirit, dismissing the battle as insignificant. Guess epic is a relative term. Eren is floored by her casual dismissal of such a legendary fight. And Fate can only wonder just how old his new travel buddy really is. But a sudden agonizing pain rips through Fate's mind. His cursed hunger is back, and his control is slipping fast. Eren notices his distress, offering him another plate of food. Fate decides to be honest, explaining his need to hunt monsters. The old knight immediately connects it to his glowing crimson eye. Fate explains he's heard of a monster nest in a nearby castle. The mention of the castle stirs something deep in Eren's past. He offers to guide them, a decision that feels deeply personal. Guess this is a field trip now. Fate questions his choice to leave the village unprotected. But Eren has a plan, entrusting its safety to Mine. Eren agrees that 50 gold is a bargain for Mine's protection. As they travel, the old knight asks if Fate also has night vision. He can tell from Fate's movements, and our boy realizes he can't reveal any more of his skills. But Eren understands. It's natural for warriors to keep their secrets. They finally arrive at their destination, a place Eren never thought he'd see again. It's the former capital Hausen, now ruled by a lich lord. The old knight knows this place will be crawling with undead monsters, and the skeletal guards on patrol are a pretty good confirmation. Guess the welcome wagon is off duty. Fate eagerly volunteers to handle the archers on the walls. But Eren warns him that physical attacks are useless against the undead. But Fate just smirks, infusing his arrow with earth magic to counter their immunity. Eren is stunned, explaining that imbuing weapons with magic is a technique even the capital's researchers couldn't master. Fate asks how Eren handles them, and the old knight simply tells him to watch and learn. The two warriors stand ready, prepared to begin their assault on the undead fortress. Fate unleashes a volley of his own, his movements a blur of focused energy. His magically infused shots tear through the skeletal guards with devastating precision. While Fate provides cover from the rear, Eren charges headfirst into the fray. But Fate notices a familiar holy light gathering around the old knight. He recognizes it as the Grand Cross, the same technique Hud used, a skill that shouldn't be used repeatedly. Guess Eren didn't get the memo. But Eren unleashes the attack with impossible ease, cutting a swath through the undead horde. Fate is completely baffled, but Eren explains the technique. He's channeling the Grand Cross through his blade, allowing for elemental attacks. He calls it a simple trick, and Fate can only laugh nervously. He's learned that Eren's definition of simple is a little different from everyone else's. With the gatekeepers down, Eren knows their element of surprise is gone. He decides they'll press the attack before the Lich Lord can rally its forces. They burst through the doors and Eren gives the order. Fate takes the archers. The two warriors sprint through the castle halls, a blur of motion. But as they run, Fate notices something strange about the castle walls. There's barely any damage, a sign the people here were taken down before they could even fight back. Below them, a patrol of skeletal soldiers marches through the streets. But their quiet infiltration is over. The undead have spotted them. The undead horde is already waiting for them around the corner. Archers take aim from the rooftops. They're completely surrounded. But Eren roars for them to push forward, knowing hesitation is death. Fate follows his lead, his scythe a blur of deadly, focused energy. He realizes these aren't mindless monsters. Their tactics are coordinated. These undead fight with the intelligence and strategy of human soldiers. Yet Eren remains completely unfazed, a whirlwind of holy light. The two warriors carve a path through the desolate city streets. But as they reach the inner castle, the skeletons suddenly stop pursuit. Guess they have a strict curfew. Fate's hunger still rages. He knows the true feast is just ahead. Eren reveals a shocking truth. This castle was once his family's home. And the Lich Lord is the very monster that took it all from him. His hand tightens on his blade as he reveals his family is still here. Fate can only question the impossible, chilling statement. The old knight recounts his return from Gallia, a desperate race against time. But by the time he arrived, it was already far too late. The Lich Lord had turned his people into an undead shield. The sheer cruelty of the tactic leaves Fate completely speechless. Eren admits he couldn't bring himself to strike down his own people. He could never find a way to win without destroying what he loved. Fate realizes the truth. They couldn't attack their own fallen comrades. Eren thanks him, admitting Fate gave him the strength to return. With his resolve hardened, the old knight is ready to face his past. They approach the inner castle, the final stage of their hunt. Together, they step through the gates into the Lich Lord's domain. But they're met not with monsters, but with a round of applause. Guess the Lich Lord has a very active welcoming committee. Fate can only stare, completely baffled by the bizarre scene. The two warriors are stunned. This is a vision from the past. It's a memory of a happier time, the entire staff welcoming them home. And among them stands a familiar figure, a ghost from Eren's life. A young man and woman greet him, a vision of his lost children. The old knight can only stare, his heart completely shattered by the sight. But Fate knows this is just a cruel trick, a powerful illusion. Greed explains the magic is powered by the souls of the dead, and the only way to break it is to kill the caster, the Lich Lord. But Greed reminds him of a terrible complication, his gluttony skill. Fate asks a question he already fears the answer to. Greed reveals a horrifying truth. The souls he devours are trapped in an eternal hell. Guess there's no happily ever after in his skill set. The revelation leaves him reeling, unsure of what to do next. As his wife's ghost steps forward, the cruel illusion is complete. The vision of his children is a painful memory for the old knight. But this memory is twisted, a dagger hidden behind a loving smile. The old knight is frozen, trapped by the faces of his lost family. The illusion attacks, a loving son turned into a demonic puppet. Fate screams his name, trying to break the spell's powerful hold. But Eren's instincts take over, parrying the phantom blade. He admits he's just an old man, clinging to what he's lost. The illusion's voice is a cold, hollow echo of his son's. It asks why he's returned, twisting his grief into a weapon. The phantom screams, calling his presence a final, brutal cruelty. The phantoms scream their accusations, blaming Eren for abandoning them. They try to drag him down, but Greed's voice cuts through the chaos, telling Fate to find the real enemy. With a determined shout, Fate pushes through the horde, his mission clear. But Eren is lost in the memory, complementing his phantom son's strength. He sees not a monster, but the boy who never neglected his training. The illusion twists a happy memory of sparring into a brutal, painful assault. Meanwhile, Fate's own curse roars to life, his hunger growing with every soul in the room. Guess it's an all-you-can-eat buffet of despair. But through the chaos, his crimson eye spots a distortion in the air. He unleashes a powerful blast, shattering the illusion and revealing the true Lich Lord. His appraisal reveals a monster with stats in the millions and a new desperate hope, a meal big enough to finally silence his curse. Greed's voice urges him on, telling him not to hesitate. The Lich Lord looms before him, a skeletal specter of death. It attacks with impossible speed, a blur of dark energy, but he remembers his training, seeing a fatal flaw in its footwork. He parries the massive scythe, a perfect counter learned from his master. The Lich Lord is stunned, its perfect assault suddenly broken. Fate shatters its weapon, declaring the end of its reign. But the phantoms of the dead rush in, forming a human shield. Guess honor isn't in this monster's vocabulary. He's frozen, unable to cut through the innocent souls he came to save. The Lich Lord smirks, knowing it has him trapped by his own morality. He realizes he can't bring himself to cut down the innocent souls. The horde of corrupted villagers swarms him, a tide of red-eyed despair. He's completely overwhelmed, their hands clawing at him from all sides. But a flash of holy light cuts through the chaos. Eren has returned to the fight. Fate can only stare in shock as his master rejoins the battle. The old knight reveals his strategy, a precise, non-lethal attack. He's severing their tendons, neutralizing the threat without destroying their souls. Guess the old man still has a few tricks up his sleeve. The Lich Lord can only watch, its perfect human shield now completely useless. It resorts to a new tactic, hiding behind the ghosts of Eren's family. But Eren stands firm, his gaze fixed on the monster, ignoring the pleas of the fallen. With a final, desperate resolve, Eren prepares to unleash his ultimate attack. The Grand Cross erupts, a storm of holy light that tears through the Lich Lord. The blast is so immense it illuminates the entire cursed castle. The Lich Lord is caught in the holy fire, its form beginning to disintegrate, but Fate sees the monster is still clinging to its unlife, refusing to fall. The attack takes a heavy toll, and Fate realizes his master is hurt. He knows the old knight can't last much longer against this foe. Greed's voice cuts in, giving him permission to use another weapon. Guess even a cursed sword can be a team player. Eren finally collapses, his holy sword shattering on the floor as his strength gives out. Fate rushes to his side, ready to finish what his master started. The old knight grits his teeth, agreeing to one last desperate plan. Master and student stand together, ready to unleash a combined attack. Together, they unleash a devastating, synchronized Grand Cross. The holy light erupts, a beacon of hope from the cursed castle. The Lich Lord can only scream as it's torn apart by the holy fire. With the monster gone, the souls of the dead are finally set free. The villagers ascend as motes of light, their long torment finally over. Among them are the spirits of Eren's children, finally at peace. They offer a silent, grateful farewell to the father who saved them. Eren kneels, his heart breaking as he says his final goodbyes. Fate watches, realizing he's witnessing their final conversation. His son's spirit apologizes for failing to protect their home. But Eren is lost in his own grief, wishing he'd done more. His daughter's spirit offers a final, gentle reassurance. She asks him to continue living by the code he taught them. With a quiet resolve, he vows to honor their memory. Their forms dissolve into motes of light, a final, beautiful farewell. The light bursts, a silent explosion of love and peace. The old knight can only watch, his long burden finally lifted.
Fate understands. Their love was strong enough to transcend death itself.
But Fate clenches his fist, knowing what he has to do. He draws his bow, shouting that his gluttony skill hasn't activated yet. He unleashes a final shot, trying to destroy the Lich Lord's remains. He won't let this monster interfere with Eren's final farewell. With a final command, he tries to freeze the monster in its tracks, but his curse roars to life, activating against his will. He collapses, fighting the urge to devour the souls of the innocent. As Eren watches his family ascend, Fate wages a war within himself. Through tears of relief, he realizes he somehow held it back. Guess self-control is a new skill he's learning. The old knight erupts in a fit of joyous laughter, his long burden finally lifted. Eren laughs, realizing that even at his age, he still has room to grow. Fate is stunned as the old knight reveals his level has broken its limit. He's only heard of such a thing in legends and asks Greed for an explanation. The sword explains that fighting alongside a trusted ally can affect a sin skill user's partner. This limit break is a side effect of Fate's power, and Eren asks for his help a little longer. Fate asks what his master has in mind for their encore performance. Aaron declares they'll finish the job and cleanse the city of every last monster. Fate's eyes burn with hunger. He agrees that the fight is far from over. He offers to let the injured knight rest, but Aaron just calls his wounds a scratch. The old man is ready for a rampage, and Fate's grin shows he's more than happy to oblige. Aaron declares it a race, a friendly competition to cleanse the city. The undead horde is shattered, their bones scattered by holy light. As dawn breaks, the castle is finally at peace, the curse lifted. Back at the village, Mine is overjoyed by her payment. Guess money really is the key to her heart. Aaron apologizes for their late return, offering the gold as a peace offering. She happily accepts, and Fate notes his master has learned how to handle her. With his final duty done, the old knight prepares to get some rest. But the villagers are waiting, having heard of their dangerous journey. They've prepared a feast to welcome their heroes home. And for the first time in a long time, they all share a meal in peace. The long night of battle ends in a well-deserved rest. Well, for one of them at least. The next morning, it's finally time to say their goodbyes. But Aaron insists the thanks are all his, admitting he has nothing left to teach. Fate is stunned, feeling he's only just begun his training. But Aaron explains he's already mastered the fundamentals. Now he must forge his own path with his unique weapon. With a confident smile, Fate accepts his master's final lesson. The old knight's tone turns serious, a final heavy warning. He tells Fate that when his mission is over, there's more to discuss. The cryptic message leaves Fate wondering what he could mean. Aaron offers a final command: survive and return to this place. Fate accepts the promise, shaking his master's hand. He vows to return, leaving the village and his new family behind.